Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast, a podcast with a name one of the hosts never remembers how to say.
Welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast. Now here's a bald guy and some Indian.
And today we're obviously during the summer break joined by a wonderful guest, Damien, known as F1Clapped, right, on Twitter. We'll put the links to follow you and everything in the description. And I guess today we're probably going to have a long discussion about Red Bull and Max Verstappen and so on. But yeah, how are you guys?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Yeah, so just to add on it, the thing is, during the summer break, there was one idea I think I had, because I think it's been last 5-6 months or so. I think probably since the end of the last championship, we've had a lot of pushback from Max Verstappen fans. I mean, Damien has had a lot of back and forth with me on DMs as well. I think maybe with Jason as well. So that when we have some time, at least during the summer break, and probably it's best, use this time, talk about Max Verstappen, talk about that side of things, because maybe we miss out a few things. And also, let's make it a Max Verstappen special to a certain extent. So
and
Damien,
we would never wind up people either, ever.
Yeah.
Never just say things. No, just to wind up Hamilton, Verstappen. It's hard to wind up Stroll fans because, I mean, they're just in an eternal state of anger. But anyway.
Are there any?
Yeah.
I think there's 2 or 3, right,
Apparently
in Canada somewhere. No?
Probably shouldn't be any.
Based on performance, no.
Oh, yeah, I forgot you're Canadian. So I completely forgot.
Big Latifi fan.
Yeah.
I prefer that guy.
Yeah,
Did me a solid.
Yeah. So would I. So what do we want to start with? You sent me the outline. I don't read it as normal.
Yeah.
So
please, Damien, I hope you have.
I did read it, yes.
Oh,
thank you. At least someone is. So
I've got
I think
it on
it's
my
mostly.
phone. It's fine.
Yeah, it's all right. So it's basically a Max Verstappen special. I think we primarily want to talk about a few controversial stuff. We'll get to it a bit later. Let's start with first the more, you can say, interesting bits. In your view, because I think I've had this question with a lot of people and I've had a lot of differing answers when it comes to this. There have been 4 titles until now. Which is in your view, the best Max Verstappen title campaign?
That's an easy one for me. I would say it has to be 21. I think just the level that Max was at the entire season was one of the better title campaigns I've seen watching. And I started watching in 2013. And I've since gone back and watched a few other seasons as well. But I think where Max was as a driver that season was unbelievable. And the only reason it was even close is because a lot of things didn't go his way and things went in the direction of Mercedes more often than not. Just some examples, like a red flag in Imola. That one thing right there could stop it. Of course, his tire popping in Baku as well. It didn't really work out for him because he would have gained more points on Hamilton that way. 11-second stop in Monza, obviously Hungary and Silverstone are big moments. There's all these moments that just went the opposite way for him. And then at the very end, the most controversial decision I've ever watched live took place, and it fell on the right side for Max. But I don't like to define this season.
Wait a minute, you're talking about the first lap incident where Lewis jumped the chicane and got,
of course,
didn't get a pin.
Yeah.
Of course.
Nothing else happened in that race.
Yeah,
but I don't like to define the season off one lap at the end of the race. I think if you can just be objective and look at all the bad luck Max had, and yes, he had some good luck too. I mean, Monza, 11-second stop, whatever. But I think how he handled that was probably the most impressive professional foul you could get in Formula One, because there's no way he thought he was making the corner. And, that's the way he fights. And I think that season was incredible for him. It's a shame that he won it that way, though, because that's all anyone talks about. But I think that season for him was incredible.
Yeah.
Jason?
See, the thing is, I have to agree, right? Because 2021, I think, is the most impressive purely just because the amount of pressure that was on him there, I think, is higher than any other season. Because 2024, for the second half of the season, didn't have the fastest car, right? But had a good lead at the start, like a good chunk of points. So that gives you a bit of a cushion. He's already had 3 seasons of knowing how to win. The pressure's kind of not as high. Whereas 2021, first time going for a season, Mercedes, as you said, their development in the second half was unbelievable. Like they really, or at least they figured out a way to turn the engine up high again. But it worked out well. And even with as you said, like Hamilton making fumbles in Imola, like the luck did seem to go back to Hamilton again a lot of the times. It would just swing back. So yeah, I think 2021, just because even up to like the very last lap at what happened in Abu Dhabi, even on the radio there, it was very much like the honest truth of I'm just putting the best fucking weekends together I can and we'll see what happens. And I think he kind of stayed true to that. And that is impressive from drivers. Most drivers like falter under that. So yeah, I think 2022, impressive against Leclerc, but by the end of the season, he had the best car. 2023, I was going to say could be the most impressive because even with the best car, like to just deliver week in, week out like that, we haven't seen that really since Schumacher or second half of 2013 with Vettel. But to do it over like such a long season is impressive. But I agree. I don't think it's as impressive as 2021. So yeah, I'd say that too.
Yeah,
if he won this season, it would be more impressive. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that we all agree on this one because I've seen Damien actually. I think it was at the end of 2023 where you posted that you rated 23 over 21. I might have seen it from you or some other Max fan. That was actually why I wanted to actually have a somewhat of a debate on this one. But yeah, I hate the fact that all three are going to agree on this. I think 2021 is going to rank as probably one of, at least in my view, one of the best season a driver has put together.
It's up there with 2012 as well as just overall entertainment as well. Like for me.
Yeah.
Agreed. But in many ways the context is missed when we talk about 2021 because 2021 came in the wake of 2017 and 2018. And if there is someone who had followed those seasons closely, there was one pattern that was almost always there, and the pattern was Vettel would pull through. He would build a certain level of a gap to Lewis in the championship, and then something would happen. And somehow both of them would be on equal points, and then by the second half of the season, entire thing will collapse. It happened in 2017 and 2018. Now you move to 2021, and I think one thing that was quite clear was every time Max was pulling some gap on Lewis, there was something that was happening. I mean, if you remember, by the time we reached Silverstone, the gap was around. It was close to a race. It was that big. The gap that was there. It was more than that.
It was higher.
33
It was more
points,
than
I
that.
think.
Yeah, I think it was 32, 33. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was that big, and the entire gap just got wiped away with what happened in Silverstone, and the penalty was bullshit. That was a bullshit penalty. You cannot take. That was, at least in my view, that was also a professional foul. Just giving a 10-second penalty was an utter joke. It should have been a stop and go penalty at least. But yeah, whatever happened.
Even if you don't want to go full way to say like professional foul, it was bad placement from a driver who knows better. So I think
precisely,
like even if you're just going on that like limited line of looking at it, it's still
just the entire context of it. Lewis just had to somehow if Lewis takes out Max on the first lap, that is it. He will win the race, even if he comes from the back of the grid. Because that's Silverstone, where it is much easier to overtake, and the only person that had a competitive car against him was Max. It was as clear as that. Once Max was gone, the race was done. You move from that, you move to Hungary, and then again the Valtteri Bottas went pinballing. So that happened, and again the gap pulled. Then again you had a bigger gap. And again people forget Spa, the qualifying. It was Max was on the back foot. Q1, Q2, Max was behind. It was just the final lap from both him and George, which basically put them in P1, P2, and Lewis in P3. And then again, what happened in the race where it just wiped out. You keep going through the season, and there were moments where Max pulled out a gap, and then the second half of the season was entirely. I had a feeling that, at least for me, it was a bit like I've seen this movie far too many times in 17-18, where a gap is pulled out, but again somehow things fall in place for Mercedes and Lewis, and again they win. And then in Abu Dhabi, I was pissed off when Lewis was not told to give the position back, because that was a slam dunk thing. That didn't happen, and I was like, okay, it's done. And then on the last lap, it just flipped completely. Again, there's a lot of people that have their views on 80-21. It wasn't the correct call. Ideally, it wasn't the correct call. But if you look at the season in balance, I think Max deserved the title more, at least in my view. And poetic justice to a certain extent. I mean,
I think, I think the simple fact on that, as Damien said earlier, no matter how you feel about that, like there was a lot of bad luck moments, a lot of bad decisions, that kind of thing throughout the season anyway. So it's hard to just 80-20.
Yeah, the way to sum up 80-20-21 is both Red Bull and Mercedes played a dangerous game with the race director. And when it came down to it, ultimately it was Red Bull that came out on top. Just entirely it came down to that one call. While
there's a
the
few
entire
other things
opposite
too.
happened.
Yeah.
There's a moment, I can't remember the exact lap, must be between like 32 to 36, but Max pits and he goes on to fresher tires, and Lewis, the times Max was putting in prior was like, I don't know, 116 as an example. And Lewis was putting in 117s, and he pits and comes out, and then Lewis matches his fresh tire pace. That's how much pace they had in Abu Dhabi over the Red Bull. It was insane. I saw that happen in real time and thought to myself, it's impossible to win this race. Even if Lewis gave the position back, it was just never going to happen. Lewis was too good. The Mercedes was too good. The combination was always going to outdo what Red Bull and Max had done. And I wish so badly we can go back to that moment in free practice where the medium long runs for Max were out of this world, and they switched it for track position to get pole position. Great lap, awesome, but bad start. You know, he does take the position back legally. Lewis goes off track, bad call. But even with all that, I don't think he wins the race. And the thing too is, just to touch on Silverstone, yes, Max gets taken out. It's horrible. And as a Max fan, I've seen him do some less than nice things to drivers as well. But the part that frustrated me was how lucky Lewis was from that, because there's actually an article I could probably find that says without the red flag in Silverstone, he also DNFs there. So he gets another red flag bailout after taking Max out. So it's just another little cherry on top of the luck he had that season. But I still think 2021 for Max is the best. And then if I had to quickly rate the others, I'd put 24 next. Just because, you know, like I always say this to people, but if he started in Miami, he would win the title with one race to go. If he took away the advantage he had, he still wins the title. And that season had...
Still impressive, yeah.
He still had really good drives. I think his best drive ever was obviously in Brazil that year. And then you can look at Canada, Spain, and Imola, and all those were really good as well. And then I think 23 and 22 are very underrated because he won so much. And 23 was just history being made. And 22 was a weird season. You know, entry of the new regs, Ferrari gets a little nerfed. He walks away with it. So I hate to say 22 is his worst title, but even if that is his worst title, his catalog of titles, that's a very good title. Any other driver with 22.
That's the season where he has the second most number of wins in a season, by the way. 2015.
Yeah, exactly, right?
22 is still impressive. It's just, as you said, it's just like the seasons have all been very impressive. So it's kind of,
I think the thing with Max is it's just the ability to make things look easy where they probably aren't. And I mean, that's just what the legends do, right? Just the exceptional talents that they have.
I think for me, like the moment where it kind of like, I knew Max was very good from obviously when he joined, like, or, you know, technically before, because watching him in F3 slightly, it was like, oh, this kid's fucking talented, right? And then when he joined, it wasn't like, I think a lot of people hone into like 2016, the win and so on. And I was like, yeah, but that does happen to a few other drivers. Like people go out in front, you're in the right position, you win. Russell, for example, the last couple of years, like not doing anything, suddenly wins a race. Like we see that. I think for me with Max, what's been so impressive is two things. It's like over the course of these titles, when I'm watching a race and Max takes the lead, there is not a single moment where I'm like, he's going to make a mistake. You know, and he has made a couple, like, you know, I know there'll be people in the comments being like, what about this one? He has made a couple, but it's so rare that you're like, okay, the other driver needs to fucking do something now because he's not going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And for me, like, that's the mark of like all-time greats. It's like they just focus on the weekend. They just want to win, you know, and they don't make mistakes. And when they make a mistake, it's so rare that we're like, why the fuck did he make that mistake? Or what happened there? You know?
Pretty much.
Yeah, like for me, as I've said a few times on this, Max for me is the best driver since Schumacher, I think. And where I get into arguments on Twitter is when people tell me Max can change physics. But I'm sure we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah, we'll get,
What do you mean he can't? Of course he can.
yeah. Anyway, moving on from this one. Again, Dame, in your view, where do you rate Max in the all-time list?
That's tough because I don't have him as number one. He's my favorite
You
driver,
better not.
but I think Michael is the number one for me. And Michael is just, his resume is going to be very tough to beat. Even if Max gets, say, 6 or 7 titles, the context of what Michael did with Ferrari and the fact that it was, the turnaround he made, I think it's pretty tough for Max to beat. And if he gets all his titles with Red Bull, I don't think it's going to beat it. Whereas if Max goes to another team, for example, and wins some titles, he can climb that order. But I have Max on a good day at 3rd and on a bad day at 5th.
This is why
Who is your second, third? What's
I got
your top
Lewis
5 in that
second.
case?
I
You
got
have Lewis in
Michael, then Lewis, and then let's just say Max can switch around with Senna and Prost as well.
Interesting.
Okay. Jason? Well,
we had this, and I got
second, right?
You and everyone in the comments got really angry with me at this one, or because I had Max in 3rd, and I just predicated it on. I was like, it also does depend though on how the rest of the career goes, because as I said, during that I was like, at one point for me, Vettel was on track to be up there in that kind of top 5, maybe top 3, and then his career took a big turn. He made a mistake by signing with this little team called Ferrari, who just things rarely go well with.
Went for the forbidden fruit.
Yeah, but look how quickly Vettel went from Jesus, this is like the next Schumacher to this guy can't win a title. Like, what's happening? So things can change. For right now, still for me, Max is in 3rd, and I think we talked about this at length on the other podcast, so I won't go crazy into it. But the reason I have him above Hamilton, for example, is it's a personal thing. It's not about the stats or anything. Like, obviously in stats.
Wait a minute, what do you mean by it's a personal thing?
Well,
You hate Lewis?
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, when I'm ranking drivers, although I've got annoyed about Lewis since, what was it, Las Vegas 2024?
Yeah.
When he said,
That
if I had
tipped you
qualified better, and I was like, well, then fucking qualify better. Shut up, Lewis. That was my tipping point. But no, it's because for me, when I'm looking at these racing drivers, I want to see a driver who they just maximize everything, because in Formula One, it's so much about the car. It's so much about the team, the strategy, like all these things come into play, right? And you just don't have control over these. Like, Max is probably still the best driver on the grid right now. We can have that argument. So it definitely is, actually. But I think this season, other drivers are close.
Yeah, but that's more
the
of
point is,
yeah.
The car is the car, and you can only do so much with that, right? But he still maximizes everything most of the time. And that's why I put him up with Schumacher and Senna, because those two guys, it didn't really matter what car they were in, what they were doing. They just tried to maximize everything all the time, and they were aggressively willing to do that no matter what. So the stats aren't as important for me as like that, just pure talent plus aggression plus just how much they were in it. And those 3 drivers at the moment for me are the best. And like I said, I think Vettel was on track to be there, but then he went to Ferrari and he just, I don't know, maybe Ferrari broke him, but by 2017, 2018, he wasn't that guy maximizing things anymore. And that's why he's just not there for me. Even though, as you know, I'm a huge, Vettel's my favorite driver, but he's just not there.
I love Seb.
Yeah, amazing. Just even for everything, even off track, just like the interviews, everything is just incredible.
Yeah, just a class act.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, I probably have him the lowest, then I have Max at 6 in that case, because in my case, I had Michael, Prost, Fangio, who else? Lewis at 4th, Lauda, and then Verstappen. So why I have these guys ahead? I think Prost is someone I think people don't rate as highly, but he's the only
He's
one
French.
who
He doesn't count as a real person.
probably that makes things worse, right? Probably because I think it's a bit of, I think he could have won the title with Ferrari if Senna almost did not commit whatever he did in 1990. He won championships with multiple teams. He's also someone who won a championship in a slower car in 1984 when he beat Mansell and Piquet. So there's a lot of things that Prost did which kind of gets overshadowed because Senna. Then I have Max above Senna already. I have Lauda because he came back after 4 or 5 years absence and won the championship, beat Alain Prost. Then you have Fangio. You have to have Fangio with he's won championships with 3 different teams. And well, before Colapinto came into Formula One, we had Fangio as the main Argentinian, and then again Michael is at the top. I don't think Lewis comes close to beating him in any which way. But what Michael did with Ferrari and how even James Walsh talks about Michael is something, I think that kind of impact, I don't think there are many drivers that have had. To an extent, Alonso and Vettel tried to have it at Ferrari. They weren't able to. Let's see what Lewis does, but I don't think Lewis is in any way close to that position at all. So, yeah.
I don't think anyone, like, yeah, Ferrari's going to be a hard thing to turn around now, I think.
I think the thing for me is I don't really compare guys like Fangio or Clark to the modern era of F1 because the cars they drove were closer to like modern day GT cars. And these are like some of the most talented drivers to ever live, but the sport is so different now. They didn't have to deal with like the high downforce of today, and it's almost just a different sport. So I would give them all the respect in the world and put them in anyone's top 5 list. It's fair to place them where you want, but I just try to keep it more modern because I just think that's easier for context. But the reason I do have Lewis as high as I do is because despite it being a car-based, series and things like that, you don't win 100 plus races. You don't win by accident, right?
No, of course, yeah.
And the stats, they don't matter at the context that like the casual fan might watch and say, oh, he's won 100 races, he's the best ever. But to see the numbers that he has put up, you can't fault him for doing a good job with the cars he's been given. And he did have some good underrated seasons in his earlier years. I think he bottled a few titles. Bottled is a pretty harsh word, but at the end of the day, I think he has to be, for me, in the top 3 because you don't get those stats by accident. You did something right.
Yeah, I think I had him 5th on my list.
He said yes to Niki Lauda. That's what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I had him 5th on my list. But it's just for me, I think you guys are using logic. Casual, you're technically a journalist, I guess, as much as you need to call someone one. So you have to do these things. Mine is very much on how I feel. Right. For me, it's just there's just so many times where Lewis is like taking time off at the start of a season, if that makes sense, or like.
No, it's true. It's very true.
Where for me, it's like I get it. Like you have these outside things you want to do. Like you've got these career wins and so on. It's just to me, it's like. This is how I like my drivers. So for anyone watching, like it just feels for me more than anything else.
If you had like a scenario where you had to pick a driver to just lock in and win a race, or you're just gonna like die or whatever. Like for me, it's Max. I'd pick Max over Lewis. I'd pick Max over anybody, but I don't think he's the greatest of all time. And I think Max is better, like talent wise. I think he's better than Lewis is, and I think you can see that through his win percentage with only 4 years of really good cars versus Lewis's career. There's a lot of numbers you can swing in favor of Max and numbers that swing in favor of Lewis. But in my opinion, like as the greatest of all time list goes, like Max isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he has to do a lot more, right? Because now
he's only 27, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
he's also
going
to have to beat Schumacher, which is, as we've all kind of said, that's a very difficult bar to pass.
Yeah.
May never pass it, but at the end of the day, it's his own career and he's got his own moments. So
yeah.
For sure. I mean, already has one of the best seasons in Formula 1 history, 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the one half of that battle, and that will probably never change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's mix things up. Since 2024, things have been a bit rocky to a certain extent, right? At Red Bull. Just give me your view on how you think Max has approached his stay at Red Bull in the last couple of seasons, how he's manipulated and gone about things.
Well, if we go back to, I believe it was January 2024, maybe a little bit later, when the Christian Horner scandal took place. Obviously, a lot of outside noise. And
he made a lot of money.
Team, but like the inter-team dynamic, right? Like we watched Red Bull implode in real time. We saw the Christian Horner scandal happen. Prior to that, Marshall had left the team. Not long after this, Adrian Newey announced his departure, which was a huge bomb to drop. And then, of course, we lose Jonathan Wheatley as well. So I say we like him on the team, but all these names are leaving, and then there's other names in the background that left as well. Some really important names, but Max has to basically show up and put up results in that environment, which is not easy to do to tune out the outside noise. So I give him credit for having the start of the season he did in 2024. That also comes down to the advantage that he had as well. But I think my only criticism of Max between then and now is when the noise got as loud as it did for certain things. I think he could have either done a little more or said a little more to quiet it down if he really wanted to. Because yes, his dad is a prominent figure in his life, and I'm not sure if you guys have ever read the book Unstoppable by Mark Hughes.
I haven't. You have, right? I think. Yeah.
I've actually gone through it twice.
I have, yeah.
I may have to check this out.
The thing that really stands out in that book is a lot of people's interpretation of Jos and Max's relationship is not as accurate as they would think. Yes, Jos was really tough on Max, and people can call it a lot of things, but Max openly talks about in the book him asking for this and wanting this, and this is the way it was going to be done. So he kind of signed up for what he got. Now, sometimes it was, of course, over the line, but so Jos is a big figure in his life to this day. And when he makes noise, I don't think Max is the person to quiet him as much as he probably could say, hey, tone it down. I don't think that's his role. And then as far as his management goes, I think Max could probably do a little more to silence some of the negative press. But he also is one of those guys that doesn't feed into the media very much. He's not very media driven. So I think he's handled it pretty well as far as on the track goes. I think he's carried this team as far as they've gotten this year. And for the second half of last year, without Max in that seat, I'm not sure how that team does. And I think his biggest focus is always on the track. So it's kind of hard to assess him further than that. But I think Red Bull themselves have basically imploded in real time. And he's been, the last while, it's been a big talk about his contracts and stuff like that. And I think that's where he could have maybe stepped in.
Do you want to go or me?
Jason?
Okay. Well, just
sorry.
I know we disagree on this slightly as well, Casual, because I know we talked in the last couple of weeks the last few weeks over the contract talks as well of you were saying like when Jos and his management team are like doing certain things, like why isn't he pushing back? And my opinion on that, as you know, has been, I think the thing is when you're successful and you've had that team around you, you kind of give your team the benefit of the doubt for a certain amount of time afterwards until things go really badly, And I think if you look at where Max's career has started and arrived at, like Jos and I always forget, is it Vermeulen, like his manager? I always forget the name.
Raymond, yeah.
These guys have gotten him through all these contracts. Like he's now one of the highest paid, if not, is he the highest paid now? I think Lewis is still slightly higher, right?
He is.
Right. So like, his team has got him there. And I think sometimes it's just like he's probably just trusting in the team that, they've done well before. They'll do well here. And I think maybe like Lewis in 2012, was it with his father? There may come a point where he's like, guys, look, I just need a more objective team that's not kind of as close and, this kind of thing. He may get to that point. Anyway, the point on that is I do think a lot of the problems over the last 18 months have been in the background. Jos, for example. And I think Jos had a very clear idea of what he wanted when the whole Horner thing happened. And also, even before that, I think Helmut and Horner, from everything I've heard, there was a falling out after the kind of Porsche situation. Not directly because of Porsche, but basically there was sides taken within Red Bull and, everything went from there. And I think the failure I find on Max's team is they took sides, and particularly Jos was quite vocal with the papers, especially with Eric Van Halen and so on. He took a side there and was very much like, I'm on the opposite side of Horner with the Red Bull board and so on, right? Which at the moment you say, well, that's kept Max there. Is that the best thing? I guess we'll see in the next couple of seasons. We don't know. But I just think the failure there was taking sides in the first place. I think when all of that kicks off, if your focus, as Max constantly says, is on performance, what you want your team to do is sit back and assess where the team's going and just say, look, this is what we want. Deliver it or don't, but, kind of push it, but don't get involved. And Jos very much got involved. And I think for me, that only had downside, no upside, because, you could basically either the team stays with Horner and performs well, and then you've always got this thing of, well, if Horner gets a car that both drivers can drive and it's winning, Horner might be like, right, guys, I've got a new driver now that can perform in this car, so fuck off. I'm not renewing the contract. So there could be that downside. Obviously, that didn't happen. Or the team could fall apart, which is what's happening now, and then you're having to rebuild it. So I think if you don't take sides, you can sit back and go, well, this looks like it's going badly, and now we can reasonably look at other places to go. But I think by taking sides, you're stamping yourself too much into the team instead of kind of focusing on your own career, which is what Jos and Vermeulen and so on are supposed to be doing. And that's the failure for me. And I think, as I said at the start, I don't blame that as much on Max. I think his team has done well for him, so he's trusting in them. But I think if something like this happens again, it'll be interesting to see if he goes, okay, guys, enough now. That'll be interesting,
The problem
That's
here
my
is,
opinion on it anyway.
I'm probably more rash in that case. I'm probably more critical, right? So,
Bloody journalists.
yeah. I mean, if I was, I would be mollycoddling a lot of these things, right? Which I don't. So, I'm not entirely in favor of how Max has gone about things, personally. Because, look, I think anyone who's actually seen the dynamics at Red Bull, there's a lot of disruptive elements that are there. And in the last 18, 19 months, of course, the Horner scandal happened. But the disrupting element was not Horner. I wouldn't call him the disrupting element, because the kind of stuff that was coming out of Red Bull, it was not from Horner in any which way. He didn't weaponize the media and run a campaign, run basically a smear campaign against someone else. He didn't do that. It was entirely done through two media outlets which have affiliation, one of them with the Verstappens, the other with Vilmaco. Once these things are happening, the problem when such things start happening is no team, at least in my view, I don't think any team can sustain success in Formula One if it is basically, if the attention is divided. They can be divided, they might hate each other. Like, for instance, Williams is one of the perfect examples. Frank Williams and I'm forgetting his name. Pat Simmons? No, not Pat Simmons. Patrick Head.
Yes.
Frank Williams and Patrick Head, they used to shout at each other like anything. But when it came to the betterment of the team, both of them were pretty focused. They didn't run smear campaigns against each other in the media. I think what I've seen in the last 18, 19 months is, and this is something, the reason, okay, let me put the cards on the table. When I compare Max, I compare him with Michael Schumacher. That is my barometer to measure how good Max is, not anyone else. And what Michael Schumacher knew in Formula One was how he became successful. The way Max has gone about the last 19 months is, I don't think he knows how he became successful. He didn't become successful because Helmut Marko picked him. He became successful because Christian Horner gave him a team which ticked every box. This was the perfect team when it came to the strategies, the race execution, the having a team boss which would go to any extent to defend him, having the perfect PU. Almost every box was ticked. That's what Horner did. That's not what Helmut Marko did. And when it came to the entire situation getting a bit muddled, ideally I would have rather hoped Max intervened and said, guys, let's cut it out. Either we are going to stick together or let's separate. It has to be one or the two. What we've seen right now is, look, Horner is out because of a coup. Now, who orchestrated it, we don't know. But he's gone. I don't expect Laurent Mekies to take Red Bull to a championship because, first of all, his power has already been stripped. If you've seen the Red Bull structure, he has nothing. It's Helmut Marko who's leading the RBPT and RBET right now, which is the energy division and the powertrain division.
Whoa. But Helmut Marko's doing great things. He asked the entire team if they could just work 10% harder.
10% more, which went down like anything in the Milton
Literally
Keynes.
a quote from The Simpsons that he said, which I absolutely love. It's amazing.
Well, you guys can't give it an extra 10%. Come on.
Could you guys work like 10% harder? Sure thing, boss.
Yeah. By the way,
You don't
this
wanna
was
win?
probably his first visit in years in Milton Keynes. So you can see how impactful he's been to the
It's just
how
one of the
how
funniest
instrumental
quotes.
he's been. The thing is, when Max doesn't know what brought him to the top, it makes me worry about what his future is going to be. And he doesn't. I personally, I'm not one for the loyalty. I mean, when Lewis announced that he was leaving Mercedes, there were a lot of people who questioned his loyalty, but I like, fuck it, this is perfect. It's entire. If it wasn't for him, you could have seen probably a year or so later where Toto announces that Lewis is gone. Formula One works that way. But if you're sticking to a team, he's sticking to this team for this season and the next. And he's seen his, let's be honest, he's seen his father disrupt and break the entire team completely. That's
the only
he's
thing
seen
thing
it
is-
happen.
Sorry, go
But the
ahead.
thing is, though, let's just focus on performance only and forget about the background noise. You had a team
Okay.
that won 21 out of 22 races, Verstappen with 19 of those wins.
Hmm.
You start the season and you win 7 of the first 10 races. You're basically picking up where you left off. A little bit of bad luck happens, with the brake fire DNF in Australia. But
Hmm.
at what point do any professional organization, whether it's a football team or a hockey team or anything like that, fire the coach after that big of a drop off? Because Red Bull fell to the second half of the 2024 season. There were times where they were like Monza and was a very low point for Red Bull. And it wasn't even really that much of a one off. Like they were at times the third, fourth fastest car. Now they were second fastest on balance of the season because the first half of the season carries that average pretty high. Post summer break, there were a few races where Red Bull was on it, but I would say probably 25% of the races they were on it and 75% of the races they were nowhere to be found. How do you have that kind of a drop off? And you also have to assess Horner's performance with the contracts in the team. You lost Adrian Newey, you lost Wheatley, you lost Marshall. You're putting all your faith in guys that clearly can't solve the problems. And then, look at this season, right? You come in and Max has 2 wins he probably shouldn't even have right now. Like Red Bull, Japan was a good pole lap and he was able to sustain it because the advantage wasn't high enough for McLaren to take advantage. And in Imola, he doesn't win the race without that lap 1 pass. He just doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's got a couple wins he probably shouldn't have. And I bet you if Charles is in that McLaren instead of Oscar, Max doesn't win that race. And he loses a win and some points as well this year on his own, doing, right? Like I think he could have won in Jeddah if he had got a better start. And it's just exasperated by the fact that Oscar had an otherworldly start. It just made things way worse.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you judge Horner's performance when you look at the team's performance? You're losing all your key members. You've fallen off a cliff. On any given weekend, you're 4th fastest to 2nd fastest. We don't know what they're going to have. Like look at Hungary as a weekend. That's the lowest weekend I've seen Red Bull have in 10 years. On pace, they got a P9.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's horrible.
Yeah, like
So-
the pace this season has been atrocious.
Yeah. So what do you do with Horner then?
So yeah, and that's the thing, because when we start questioning this, sorry Jason, I'm jumping in.
No, it's
So
fine.
when
You always do it.
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
cut you off, ever.
Yeah. So when we start talking in these terms, that what should we do with Horner after such a drop off? Again, drop off is there. There is no doubt about it. But then you have to look at Formula One in general. Should Horner have been fired in 2014? Because the year prior he bored people to death with the kind of dominance Red Bull had. Or should Toto Wolff had been fired by now? Because after dominating for 8 seasons, I think four barren years. When we talk about Formula One, there are a few things that we have to understand. When it comes to resource drain, that's going to happen. When it comes to ups and downs, that's going to happen. If you have to be successful in Formula One, I think it was John Noble who wrote a few things. I think he posted it. You need a few check boxes that need to be ticked. The first is having a backer that provides you a ton of money. That's the first. Second is a team being run by a strong boss that can take things forward. Third is having an elite talent. And fourth is not having a board that continues to intervene again and again and again.
Yeah.
Once you have these things in place, success will come. Now it won't come today, it won't come tomorrow. There will be periods of struggle. Red Bull went through the thing is, a lot of people don't remember that in 2014 Red Bull went through a similar resource drain. Peter Prodromou, who's currently, I think he is the technical director of McLaren.
McLaren, yeah.
He was
Yeah.
snapped by McLaren from Red Bull in 2014. It's not only him. They lost the sporting director. They lost 2 more key personnel. Dan Fellows was also supposed to leave, but he stuck around. The
Yeah.
thing is, these kind of resource drains happen when you are dominating. Mercedes went through the same one. Eric Blandon is currently in in Aston Martin, if I'm not wrong. These things will happen. Foundationally, what Red Bull did after that is actually what is commendable, because all these people that became superstars afterwards, Rob Marshall, Pierre Vache, I still rate him very highly, Enrico Balbo, all these guys, they rose within the ranks. It's not that they just went out and poached these people. What tends to happen with Red Bull is, and this is something that's their philosophy, is they give the internal talent time, and sometimes some restructuring, some bedding in time takes, and then ultimately they start regrouping and building. Horner didn't have this time around, and I think that's where I tend to question, because this is the same team that won 21 out of 22 races, I agree, but this is also the same team that went on a 7-year ban without championships from 2014 till 2020. So
Yeah, I
have to
think you
take
can
that into
explain it though.
context.
Because in 2014, the main reason Red Bull wasn't successful was the bad power unit, right?
But they
So
they should have known, right? That's the thing.
Well,
It's a big
it's
oversight.
a bit of guesswork too, right? For benefit of the doubt on Christian. I mean, he just had the best power unit essentially prior to that, or at least one of them.
No.
Like the Renault was great
Renault?
in the V8 era.
Renault was poor. Look at Monza
V8
every
era?
season. 2013
you're right,
and 20. Yeah.
It wasn't
right. It was
as
just-
poor as it was in
It wasn't as
2014,
poor.
no.
I just remember it being like.
Yeah.
I think the standard in my brain is that it wasn't blowing up every race.
Yes, I think
but
if,
no,
by
but
that
It
standard
was.
it was.
By the way, it was 2010. I think Vettel lost 3 race wins because of this.
I mean,
If I'm
Verstappen
not
had like
wrong.
10 DNFs in one season. Like,
It got worse. I mean, it used to blow up. It got worse.
yeah, I'm talking like 2017 was like an all-time low for
Yeah.
that. And I mean, like they had the bad power unit from 14 onward. Like it was horrible. And that's a really good like excuse for Christian. And then for Toto, like why doesn't he get sacked? I think, if he had lost guys like James Allison and he lost the backbone of that Mercedes team, I bet you he wouldn't be there right now. I mean, he owns part of it, so maybe he would, but it's just, there's always a little bit of like, there's always like the saving grace, right? But with Horner, the main difference here is we didn't go through a regulation change. We're stuck in the middle of these regulations, and he just dropped off a cliff. That's very different.
Okay,
Than
so
say,
should we? I mean, again, this is basically. Sorry to butt in. This is basically the
It's okay.
Ferrari talk. This is Ferrari talk, by the way, because that's what Ferrari does, isn't it? You don't perform, or you have a bad season, or a couple of them, and then all of a sudden it just
Here's
goes
the
off
thing,
the hill.
though. I do think, right? Look, first of all, one thing I disagree on is I do think, like casual, like Horner, of course, has a lot of blame for what happened, at the start of 2024, because regardless of like how it was used, and if you want to use the word politicized by like the internal struggle, I think that that carried
It started
on.
with him being a piece of shit.
He still was a horrible husband, right? So like,
Yeah.
and he did something bad, and he got in trouble for it. And like reasonably, you could say as well, like a lot of other people would just be fired regardless of whether it was harassment or whether it was just like conduct
Do it
with
for
a
that.
coworker.
I have no issues with it.
Whatever. So the one thing I do give Horner credit for, though, after that is I think that after that situation, he did do a Bill Clinton. He did just focus on the economy and kind of stay quiet. And I think a lot
No
of
more
the blame
Monica
from-
Lewinsky's. So yeah.
Whereas like the other people then kind of kept the noise going around for their own benefits, and I think that didn't help, right? But anyway, like there is the thing I will say though is I do think that the fall of, like when we put the entire fall in context, I do think it's a little overblown. And this is one area where I know I always get in fights with people on Twitter. Well, I say fights. I jump on Twitter, argue with people, then leave and go back to my normal life. But and I have notifications
Just
off. It's
500
amazing.
views.
Yeah, which is you bald fat bastard. What do you call it? Anyway, yeah. So the point was, Marshall left, I think 2023, right? So that was
he left
before.
just before
2022.
the Horner.
Yeah. So
No, he left just before the Horner issue.
it was 2023 at some point, though, wasn't
He
it?
left
Like
because
just
he went to
before.
Left
McLaren
late 22 and he joined McLaren January
at the beginning of 24.
23. 23.
Yeah.
January 23.
We'll have to Google this.
Yeah, I'm going to Google it real quick
because
I'm pretty
he's
sure.
the one who's actually considered to be the one who kind of
So, no,
transformed.
he announced
McLaren
his
first
leaving.
transformed in 2023, right?
He announced his leaving in May of 2023, but because he had gardening leave, he
Oh.
didn't join until 2024.
When did he join?
Start of
2024 January.
Yeah.
Is
so,
it? I'm,
yeah.
I'm,
It may
I'm
have been
messing up the
May of
timeline in that
2024,
case.
but
Yeah.
he announced
It's okay.
his
I actually
yeah.
do this all the time. Growing up, I played AAA hockey, and I've had 3 concussions. You cannot ask me to remember without like that's why in my
I have
mind
no
I'm like the
concussions.
Renault was a good engine, but I'm thinking like it was at one point, but like no.
I have no hair to keep the memories in, so that's my excuse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But so he left it like May of 2023. So I don't know if that's like something. I think that's a case of like he's not moving up because, I mean, at that point you've got Vache and Balbo and Nui building literally the best car in history at that point. That was on track to be in history at that point. So where's he moving up? You know, so he's obviously going to go.
Rob, by the way, was about to retire. So
so McLaren pulled him across.
Yeah. So what happened was Rob, he's much over. He's around 50, late 50s, I think. No, he's early 50s, but he had a decent enough game. He said, I'm done now. I'll probably retire. And
Thank
at
God
that
he
point
didn't,
in time, Zach Brown came in and said maybe a new challenge if you wanted to go ahead, and that's how it happened.
Well, my point on this is you've got Rob Marshall, right, who left before that. You've got Jonathan Wheatley, who's a big loss, obviously, but I do think that's less about that situation than he was just number 2. There was nowhere for him to go. Look at James Vowles. It's kind of a similar situation.
I mean, if Audi comes calling.
You know? So it's like you can only go to team principal because there's nowhere else up for you to go. So it's like similar to Vowles in that situation. Like, I think in terms of people leaving, I do think there's a good point on that, but I think a lot of that is around the noise. Like, I don't know if Nui would have left if it wasn't for all the noise afterwards. So while I blame that, I would say that's 50% on Horner and 50% on Red Bull, you know, because both of them did their part in causing the tension. And the reason Nui left is because he just doesn't like scandal. He famously hates scandal. So he's just gone, you know. So I think in terms of personnel, I think a lot of it is like ebb and flow anyway, but then I do think there is part of it is just the noise, and we can blame that between them. The point I was getting to though is like, I think in terms of the drop off, I do think when you put the whole thing in context, it's not as bad as it actually looks on paper, right? And the reason I say that is, like, really, Red Bull didn't just drop off. McLaren got a lot better. And that put Red Bull into an area where it was always going to be kind of stuck because they got locked into this kind of minimal performance window. And that then allowed kind of Ferrari and Mercedes to kind of have on-off weekends, you know, and get better. But it was more, for me, 2024 was more McLaren getting better than it was Red Bull getting shit. And that put Red Bull in a really difficult situation. Because as soon as that happened, you saw even like Checo started wildly underperforming. I know he always wildly underperformed mid-season, but like really fucking badly underperforming. And I think that's a case of, right, to get the car to be anywhere near the McLaren, this is the window we have. And there's only one driver who can get anywhere close to that, and that's Max. So sorry, Checo, but you know, you're fucked. So then obviously when you're only focused on Max and you're like, Checo just can't drive the car, constructors drops, I think it looks worse than it is. And then I do think, and this is more on Vache than anything else, I do give Vache a little bit of sympathy because I also think he's then in a really difficult position for 2025 because you have 2 options. You kind of go back and fix the base issue with the mechanics and so on that's got you in this tight window, which means you have to essentially start over with performance, and you essentially end up, what's that team again? Ferrari. You essentially end up in their situation where you've changed something, you're not sure, and then sure, you've got a balanced car, but it's not as quick. So you're not anywhere near anyway. Or you can try and just hone in and build a car like just to something that Max can just about perform and hope that McLaren get fucked up by this new technical directive and we just hang in there. Yeah. And I think essentially that's what they did. So yeah, it's just for me, I think there was a drop off and I think there should be like blame to go around and they do need to fix things. But I do think it's like, because of all these things together, it gets turned into this narrative of like the team just dropped and it's Horner's fault. And I think that's a bad way to look at it. I know neither of you guys actually said that, but I do think that's the way it's like been portrayed a lot.
No,
and
I don't
agree
with you.
Because
I also think though,
go for it.
Sorry. I also think though that Red Bull is ironically suffering from success here because they came out of the new regulations and they didn't have to face all the suspension and chassis issues that other teams had to face. And because of that, they had this sort of built-in cushion where they could just perform and their window was pretty wide and they were good on every track, right? 22 and 23. But once other teams figured out their issues and they arrived, and Red Bull had masked their problems for so long via, a combination of Max driving and them not having to compete as much. Now they're under the gun and they need to fix these issues. But how do you go about fixing these issues without completely falling off a cliff?
Yeah.
You don't want to redo the whole concept and look like Ferrari this year, right? So I do think that some of that blame should be shifted away from Christian because, they were so successful that they never had to address the problem. Other teams caught up and then they were kind of caught flat-footed.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add on that, sorry to interrupt as well, is just
go for it.
also from 24 to 25, I think there's basically one guy who could have helped you address that and be pretty sure you could address it without dropping, and they lost that guy.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's this amalgamation of just horrible things all happening at once,
Yeah,
But
and I don't think Christian should have been fired for just performance. I just bring that angle up because I do think with a big drop in performance, you do have to have those conversations. And personally, as a Red Bull fan, as you can see, I don't like seeing Christian gone. I think there's a lot of shallow fans that are happy to see him gone because it gets likes on Twitter. But I think Christian is arguably the best team principal to ever do it. I mean, there's some guys out there that are probably a little better, but they're not doing it anymore. And if you had one guy to lead your team from the trenches to the top, I think everyone picks Christian Horner. So it does suck to see him leave, but I do think that there is an angle that it's a justified departure.
I think at some point, Casual, I know we're going to jump into Red Bull as a whole, but I don't know if we're jumping into that right now. But
No. Not yet. Go for it.
Okay, well, I was going to just say, I wonder, though, my biggest concern is how they went about it, because I think a smart leadership board waits at least until the end of the season and gets everything ready and prepared. But I guess we can talk about that later on.
Because
I should read your rundown, but
good
it's
job.
a lot of effort.
I know. I had
I'll
to put
read
that
it
effort,
now.
by the way.
I'll read it now. Go ahead.
I mean, it's an effort for you to read. Sure.
I don't know why you write.
I was the one who thought it out. I think, coming back to the Max angle in the entire, just to wrap the whole thing up, my worry is, look, the way they've gone about it, 25 is done. They're not winning this season. And I think Max is, I guess he's staying for 2026, irrespective of the summer holidays, wherever he's celebrating. Yeah. He's probably
Is anyone tracking his jet?
I mean, you don't need to.
I think he's actually with Toto Wolff last week. Like, there's pictures and everything.
On the yacht and everything. It's so funny.
He was there yesterday, I think. What Toto was at his yacht or something. Anyways.
If those pics had came out 4 weeks ago, it would have been glorious to watch. Just the whole thing. But
poor George.
Yeah.
I mean, his summer break got fucked with all of this. Anyways, coming back to this, my main concern is when you're a Max Verstappen, in the medium term and the long term, you try to position yourself in the best possible place. And the way things have gone, I think it's as clear as day that Red Bull is not the place where he's going to have success. And that's why I end up questioning because look, it can be Team Max Verstappen, but it's at the end of the day, it's Max Verstappen, right? He's the one if he wins, it will be him. If he loses, it will be him. It's not going to be someone else. And the way he's been, look, if Max wanted, Horner was not fired. Let's be clear, right? Because if the board reached out and they said that we are firing Horner, and Max says, if Horner goes, I go, Horner would be there. And with Horner, you could have probably had the belief that maybe not next season, maybe not even 27, but eventually he'll probably drag this team back to the top. I would have had that belief to a certain extent. Right now, I'm skeptical that Red Bull is heading towards success in any which way, at least for the next few years, before they wake up and realize that board is not the way to go about things. And that's where Max comes into the picture, because look, once you start losing, getting back to a winning car, your stock falls every year. By the way, Fernando Alonso is a perfect example. He doesn't win this season, you'll have a new champion this season. 2026, we don't know which way the wind is going to blow. We might have another new champion. By then, we'll have different champions on the grid and their stocks will rise. At that point, is Max going to position himself in the best possible car? And if that best possible team is already available, will they be willing to drop one of the drivers unless it's Toto Wolff? Because he will. Unless it's Toto Wolff. Will he be able to position himself there and achieve a long-term success? I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure because, and that's, I won't have seen Michael Schumacher in this position. That's my whole thing, because throughout his career he had one conviction, that this is the bunch of people that are going to bring me success, and he brought that people along to Ferrari. And even before joining Ferrari, he had a specific list of things that these are the things that need to be in place unless I'm not coming. As I said, I compare Max to Michael. I don't compare him to a Lewis, Alonso, or others. That's why I tend to, say that maybe he should have done better.
Yeah, and I think the power unit's a big question mark too. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't expect them to nail it. I don't think anybody does. So, I think next year will be a very dull year for Verstappen fans. But I think the doors are still open for Mercedes and even Aston Martin because Fernando's getting older. And I think with Honda and Adrian there and, the connections that he has, I think he's got two decent options in the near future.
What about Ferrari?
Oh boy. I don't want Max to go to Ferrari, as iconic as that would be for him to go there. I would like him to
it's not good
continue
for
winning.
anyone's health.
No.
Yeah.
No, I just don't think you can win at Ferrari. And I think Charles is a good example of that because Charles is a fantastic driver. And he
a bit dead
achieves
inside by now.
Yeah, he achieves what he can, but I mean, you've seen how many times has he been let down by that team. So I just don't want to watch Max go through that. And Max would not sit through it like Charles does.
I don't think he goes there anyway.
That is exactly why. Actually, I thought that Lewis would bring the house down at Ferrari. I think maybe once he gets his performances up, he might, because he's going to bring a lot of changes. I expect the same from Max if he ultimately ends up going there. But let's talk about this thing, because I think initially my view about Max's future was quite pessimistic when the whole thing at first transpired. But since the summer break, and I've seen both Toto and Max basically hugging it out a bit too much apparently, my view on how Max is currently positioned, at least in terms of 2027, it seems to have changed to a certain extent. Because before I give my view, let's first put it to you guys. How do you think the future holds up for Max? Because where do you think he goes?
I think that's going to very much hinge on how Red Bull does. If Red Bull somehow pulls off this Hail Mary miracle and they win next year, he will not leave.
Yeah.
But let's just put that at about a 3% chance or something very low.
You're very optimistic.
If 2026 is a disaster, unfortunately, I think his number one prospect is going to be Mercedes. And if that didn't work, I think we'll see him in green at Aston Martin. But I think more than likely we'll see him at Mercedes at some point. As much as I don't want to see it, I think that's what will happen.
Yeah. Jason?
I'm not sure if it'll be Mercedes, to be honest. And I would have been sure before, but I think after this season, these contracts and so on.
When are you going to get convinced? After we see a video of both of them shagging it, at that point, are you going to be convinced now? They are basically spending the summer break together.
When
now.
I see the sex tape, then we'll talk. No, I don't know. Like, the reason being is I think that I guess it depends on like George and Kimi's contract this year more than anything else, right? Because as much as you can like tear up contracts in Formula One whenever you want, I think like the reason we're seeing these hang out a bit now is I think George, for example, specifically, is trying to put a little bit of pressure back on Toto now to say, look, I'm performing brilliantly this year. I want a fucking 2-year contract. And I want your decision next year to be between Kimi and Max, not between me and Max. So I think like the fact that Toto is so publicly pushed for this and it hasn't come off, I think he's probably going to be getting a bit of pressure from the board as well to kind of lock down the guys that he has, at least one of them that's performing. Maybe not so much Kimi. Like Kimi, you can put on a 1+1. He's new, he's a rookie, he still has to prove himself. Like all of that is fine. But I don't know then if he does lock George into a 2-year contract and it's not with an option, if it's just a 2-year contract and there's no performance clauses and so on. I know contracts can be bought out, but it's like both parties have to agree. Like Formula One has a really weird contract situation at the minute. But then he has to replace Kimi, and I don't know if Toto replaces Kimi for Max, because then if Kimi goes on to perform, like he's going to basically feel like he has done with losing Max in 2016. So I don't know. I think that whole situation after this season is a bit more complicated next year.
You've probably not seen his recent quotes, right? Toto's.
Oh, look, Toto. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not sure though. No,
haven't, right?
What have I missed?
Toto, they were actually made during the Hungarian Grand Prix, but they've just come out. So he said that again. First, he glazed George like anything. Like he's basically a superstar now. But then he turned track and said, "Look, when it comes as a Mercedes boss, I have to keep my options open, both for the short term and the long term.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to deal with a certain amount of pressure in Formula One." So he's made it clear.
Sure.
What it means is he's basically offered George a 1+1, which is a 1-year extension and an option which is on Mercedes' side.
And George is in the poor position of there's not really anywhere much better to go, unless he can force Alonso out of a seat because Stroll unfortunately isn't leaving. Like there's
he could
not
take
really
a Williams seat.
Yeah,
I bet you Williams is good next year.
That's true.
Not as good as Mercedes.
Not as good as
right?
Mercedes, though, is the problem. I think. Well, we still don't know if Mercedes can build a fucking chassis because they haven't done that in a while either. So who knows?
I mean,
you know?
Yeah, Mercedes hasn't been great, and I think, and not to like downplay them in any way because they're an elite team, but do they win as much as they do without the PU restrictions and the advantage they had? Like probably not.
Well, here's the even bigger question that we've brought up a few times on this podcast: is even if they build the best engine next year, will they be the best? Yeah, will they be the best Mercedes powered team? I don't know, because I don't think like this isn't like the old days where they could have like an engine that's 2 races ahead with better mapping. Like they have to give McLaren the exact same engine with the exact same parts at the exact same time now. So do I trust like, you know, Rob Marshall, Pedromu, Hody, is it? I always get his name wrong as well. And then you've got like Cardile coming in. I trust them more than Allison.
Going to Aston.
No.
Enrico Cardile is.
Oh,
has
sorry,
joined
you're right. Sorry, my
UE at
bad.
Aston.
Yep, my bad. I'm going to blame the flu and being old. But yeah, so they've got this, but either way, they've got this incredible team that can put a chassis together. So like, I don't know. Mercedes haven't been the best at building a chassis even during their dominance. Ferrari
they
and
were
Red
carried
Bull.
by an engine.
Yeah, Ferrari and Red Bull always had a better chassis. The engine was what made the difference. So I'm not sure. Like, and if Max sees next year that they're losing to McLaren, like, why would Max go there?
That's why I think Aston Martin is the other option for him, because the Honda power unit is not going to be bad. Yeah, and there's also I'm not familiar.
There are, by the way, there are some doubts with Honda because they have what happened with them is they left the sport, and when they left the sport, they closed down the entire facility, sold everything to Red Bull. They started building RBPT, and when they came back, so they have at least I think 6 or 8 months of deficit that they have to cover, and that's a lot.
But to the point there, like if you're going to trust any team, even if they showed up with the 3rd best engine next year, if you're going to trust any team to be able to make that power deficit up in a year or so, it's going to be Aston, because like Honda have a track record of doing it. Plus they're led by Andy Cowell, who built who was in charge of the 2014 Mercedes engine. Plus you've got the integration with, you know, even like, I know Dan Fallows isn't highly rated as much anymore.
He's done.
But he knows how to.
He left.
Yeah. Oh, is he gone as well? I'm losing track of all of this now.
But
what's going on?
There's also that new, I don't know if we want to call it a rule or whatever, but there was like a statement that came out a day or two ago that talked about how Formula One is very aware of power unit dominance and they won't allow that to happen. So I just don't think the power unit is
useless, by the way, that rule, because it's primarily focusing on ICE, the internal combustion engine, and that the internal combustion engine is not going to be the differentiator, is going to be the batteries, and they've got nothing in place.
I think he's right in terms of like they will be a lot more keen-eyed on it this time.
Yeah, we're not going to see like 40 horsepower gaps.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
Like,
I think we might.
I bet you I think the
Maybe
biggest
for
gaps
one
we'll see
season.
are like, I think it's going to close quick. Like, I don't think Formula One wants a repeat of what they've had. I think when you look at like 2014, 2015, 16, like it was in the trenches at that point.
Yeah.
So
they were a tough watch. I agree with you on that. If we have to talk about 26, there are certain scenarios that could be in place. The first is if Mercedes has the best power unit, it's McLaren or Mercedes that are the two teams that are probably going to be at the top. They might be
Yep.
battling it out. Then you have, if Aston Martin is competitive, the power unit is still decent enough. Maybe Aston Martin is another team that's close enough. Why I still, I'm not too confident about Aston Martin is, look, Adrian is amazing, great, but you can't put it down to just one person. Again, it's a bit like
but
chef and ingredients kind of thing, right? He can put things in place, but it's not going to be the fact that, okay, Adrian is there, so success is guaranteed.
no, but I think
He
all
didn't
the
win a title
ingredients are there.
throughout
Is the thing,
the 2000s, by the way. He was there. He was in Formula One. He didn't win. He didn't win anything, and it could happen again because he had the team and facilities in Red Bull. Will he have the same in Aston Martin? We don't know yet. Until he's done
Well,
it, we have to wait. So,
Well, we do know that Aston has the facilities, though.
Yeah.
They have all brand
but
new
they also
everything, new
have
wind tunnel.
they also have Lawrence Stroll, who, from what I've heard, is a shitty boss, and he's shitty boss in terms of he doesn't look left or right when he's speaking to even the top management and
I
the
don't
junior
know.
management
I
is
think,
present.
look, I think if it was anyone else, I think if it's like with Andy Cowell and Nui in charge, I think it'll be very much Lawrence Stroll is there to make sure, one, his son doesn't get demoted for some random reason, and two, to just pay the checks.
I mean, his son is doing the best possible job of finding himself in the worst possible places.
But my point is, like, looking at Lawrence Stroll's entire business career, he has been that guy who's just found the best people and just opened the checkbook. Like, he's very good at that, and even
That
like
is there.
with Aston Martin as a whole, like the group, even look at now how he's just like it looks like he's selling it, but he's not. He's just like, right, I've done it. My investment's paid off. I'm just giving control to this, and slowly just.
I mean,
like,
the team is
taking it
ultimately
out.
destined to be owned by the Saudi welfare fund. That's the future that the team has. Again, it might happen. It might be good, but the scenario is that these are the 3-4 teams that are probably.
So
funnily, none of us picked Ferrari.
We're getting off topic though. Are we going to say Max is going anywhere other than Mercedes or Aston? Do any of us think
Ferrari?
So? I really don't think he goes to Ferrari.
I know.
Unless he's into BDSM and just hasn't told people. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other reason.
The reason why I'm saying there might be a case of him going to Ferrari is, first is that I don't think that if the Mercedes is a strong power unit, I don't think Mercedes will be the dominant car. I think it will once again lean a bit more towards McLaren because the gap is too big. The kind of stuff that McLaren is doing right now, it is world class. I don't think Mercedes is going to be the team. I don't think Max ends up at McLaren in any which way. He hates Zach Brown, and justifiably so.
I also just think McLaren seems like a team that they've got two drivers, and if one of them's winning the championship, they're kind of like, well, we've got harmony here.
Pretty
let's
much
just leave it at that.
Exactly.
So it's one of the few teams that would stick with their lineup, I think.
Pretty much. And then you have Aston Martin, a team that I think it's reliable that he was offered $1 billion contract. There were rumors, they never got
It was $1 billion
substantiated.
over 5 or 6 years, right?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
$1
because
billion
that's
over
what I
5 years,
heard
it was
as well.
200 mil a season, which is record breaking in terms of the kind of money that he will
It's
be
like
getting.
Ronaldo money.
Yeah. It's insane.
And he was apparently offered, and he didn't go because he's not a huge fan of the way the Strolls are controlling things. At least he has that wherewithal. I mean, he should know what helps the team win, and he wasn't happy with that. That's why he said no. So maybe that changes. Then he probably moves to Aston. I don't know, or the situation at Red Bull is so dire that he moves. If these three options are not there, I don't really see him. First thing is, I don't see him sticking at Red Bull. Second thing is, these are the options that are on the table. If somehow Aston Martin and Mercedes are off the table, I think there comes a case of, okay, fine, I don't have anything in the short term that's going to help me win. Let me go and try and build some legacy. And that's where Ferrari comes into the picture. I think that is where, because what's going to happen at Ferrari next season, let's be clear, Lewis retires at the end of the season. I'm pretty sure about that. I don't think Leclerc sticks around beyond 2026. And if that happens, Ferrari is going to open the checkbook and pretty much it, they'll sell Maranello to Max to come down. I'm pretty sure that that's going to happen. But if Max is yes or no is entirely up to him. But I think there's still a possibility that maybe we see Max at Ferrari. Maybe.
Well, I could see your vision, but I think Max rates Charles pretty high, and he sees what Charles has to deal with, and I'm not sure he wants to sign up for that. But
Yeah.
I mean, what you've described, if that comes to to fruition, then yeah, I could see him possibly doing that.
Yeah.
I would have thought if it was Red Bull was bad next year and there was nowhere like good for him to go. So if McLaren was, let's say McLaren were dominating next year and he can't go there, right? And he just doesn't want to sit around. Beforehand, I would have said he takes a couple of years off. I'm just not sure now because he's done
not taking any.
He's done the same.
Yeah.
He's
done the same thing, right?
I was saying, David, like a couple of weeks ago, it's so funny to me how every driver goes through this of like, yeah, I've got my championships, I'm going to retire early. And Max was doing the same, like Hamilton did it and Vettel and I think Schumacher as well back in the day.
Alonso, I remember quite vividly. In 2006, he was battling Michael and he has a habit of making comments. He said that I won't be racing in Formula 1 when I'm 40.
Yeah. But now Max
I think
has
Michael
said,
was
like,
36 or 37 at the time.
And now Max has said he's like, well, we'll see where I'm at when we're in my 30s, So he's like very much like sticking around, which is good for us as fans to have him on the track. But it's just funny to me how like every driver goes through this. Yeah. Or every successful driver, So he could. Yeah. But then, maybe there is the alternative option of like not leaving Formula One for good. But I mean, Max is good enough that he could go and do, a couple of years of like an Alonso did and come back, so maybe he decides we're bringing V8
have the same thing that Vettel had in 14 where he just hated the cars.
Yeah.
Because Vettel hated the V8 to V6 turbos move because first of all, they sounded like a hairdryer and the car handled poorly and he was just completely zoned out for almost half of the season.
Yeah.
And I hope Max doesn't go through that because if that happens, I think you're correct. He might take an year or so off. I'm not sure he'll do it because, as I said, the sport moves quickly. Alonso left. When he came back, he joined an Alpine. He didn't join a Mercedes. And I think that's also something we have to keep in mind. Kimi left.
I don't think
he joined a Lotus.
No. Yeah. So yeah, it's probably unlikely. But I'm just wondering. The good thing is it's going to be interesting. The good thing is we don't know. How it goes. It's not like a done deal. I'm just hopeful that it isn't a situation next year where we just get like one or two teams dominating for the next decade again. I just hope that's not the case. But.
I have I don't ask for too many things. I just want the racing to be better. I just want the grid spread that we have. I want that to be smaller and I want a championship battle. These three things are there. Anyone, any driver, any team, I don't care. I'll be more than happy.
And I just want a new co-host, but here we are. So what's next? We're going to finish up in like an hour and a half, so like 20 minutes or so, if that's okay. So,
Damien, do you have something to ask? I mean, I left one thing open for you. If you have anything you wanted to ask or you wanted to discuss.
Okay, well, I'll discuss it with you guys. I actually think that the way we assess drivers is a little incorrect, and I'll use Max as an example. You have different tiers of fans that do this, but I think the emphasis on an error a driver makes is also needed to be measured against how impactful that error was. So you'll notice, like, for example, in Spa this year, I think it was turn one, if I'm not mistaken, but Charles completely misses turn one and loses like almost a full second. And even with that loss of time, with Max right behind him, no DRS enabled and essentially dry running on on inters, Max couldn't pass Charles. And the narrative for that weekend is, oh, well, Max messed up his qualifying, so that's his own fault. And it's like, okay, he messed up his qualifying. He had no grip, reports it, spins a tire, doesn't qualify in third, qualifies in fourth. But in the race, Charles makes a huge error, gets away with it, and there's no discussion about the error. And then you get this narrative where people say, like, oh, Max never makes mistakes, or or Max is losing it because is not in the fastest car, so he makes too many errors now. And it's like, okay, but both errors cost something. One guy gets away with it because of outside factors. For example, I thought they could have started the race 30 minutes earlier than they did.
Which one was the Charles Leclerc one? Sorry to button. Which one was the
It was
Charles Leclerc
it
one?
was a few laps into the race. It wasn't.
It was like
first.
A couple laps in. He was going through his tires quite quickly, and he missed the turn completely and came out, and Max was right behind him, like 0.2 of a second behind, instead of like 0.6. And even with that little of a gap, it wasn't enough to make the pass because there was no DRS enabled and they're dry running with inters. And Verstappen sets his car up for the wet, basically starts dry running. And the narrative that weekend is this race was an all-time performance for Leclerc. It was unbelievable. He kept Verstappen behind on the wrong setup in the wet and all these things like that. But it's at the end of the day, it's like, Charles did a great job and his qualifying lap was great. But we didn't have any wet running. We had a dry line before the race even started. And even with that mistake, it wasn't enough for Max to make the overtake. And Max isn't a guy that shies away from an overtake. If the overtake was there, he makes it.
Yep.
So when we assess these races and we give drivers the scores for the season and we say things like, well, Max's score for Spa is low because he messed up his Q3 lap. It's like, well, how do you rate that low and then rate, say, Charles having a great weekend, even though he messed up in the race? Any other conditions, he gets passed and doesn't get the spot back. And that's the context that's lacking. Now, that's just one example, right? That goes through every weekend, the way we analyze drivers. We really focus on the error more than the result and the context behind the result.
Yeah.
For example, in Hungary 2022, Max started in 10th, spun completely, and won the race even though he spun.
Yeah.
And it's one of those performances where you're like, wow, if you can spin and win, like that's impressive. But let's say he doesn't win that race. He spins,
then it's
puts it
a
in
big
the wall.
mistake. Yeah.
Huge mistake, right?
Yeah.
So he gets away with the spin because he wins. But whereas in qualifying, if he doesn't get the absolute last microsecond, all of a sudden it's a bottle job. I just think the standards that we hold the drivers to are unrealistic. And Max is a good example of this, but another one is actually Lando Norris. Lando gets crucified for nothing all the time. Like, has he had some bad moments this year? Yeah. Canada was a bad moment. Saudi Arabia qualifying was a bad moment. He hasn't maximized as many weekends as he should have. But Lando's season in 2024 and in 2025 are actually very good seasons. I think people crucify him for the slightest error, and those same errors that get made by another driver don't get talked about. And that's the problem with how we discuss drivers and how we start rating them. And then it goes even further. And with qualifying times, you'll take the best 2 laps of teammates and compare and get their gaps, but those aren't representative because
there were
there's
2
so
different
many
laps, or
they have 2 different laps.
Yeah.
You don't know what the driver faced in each lap. There's no perfect lap out there.
don't get casual started on best sector times either.
Yes, I guess my whole point for this whole bit that I brought up is just I think the way like F1 Twitter and specifically F1 Twitter and then just people in general analyze drivers is completely backwards, and they focus way too much on what happened, not the end result, because you can make an error and finish the race and win, and it gets completely overshadowed, and you can do everything right and make a small error and it gets called a bottle job.
Yeah, like I would say like Norris and Leclerc are perfect examples of this for me as well, because if you remember, like up until last 2 seasons, up until for Leclerc, up until only like 2 seasons ago, it was Leclerc just constantly makes mistakes and throws things away, and like that. This was this narrative about Leclerc all the time, right?
Yeah, which isn't even true.
No, it's not. And also, as I kept saying at the time, I was like, yeah, but the difference is like Leclerc is constantly in a car where he's having to drive it on the limit to get any sort of results. And if you're driving the car on the limit all of the time, you're going to make more mistakes than someone who has 10% in hand, for example, because
100%.
You take a corner and you're on the limit, you push it ever so slightly. It could be the tiniest little movement and you're in the wall. So like, he's constantly pushing for wins in a car that's really not capable of it consistently. So he's constantly on the limit, so he makes more mistakes. And you see, like over the last couple of years, he hasn't been in the pressure zone of like basically Ferrari hasn't been anywhere near a win most of the time. Probably helps as well, but he hasn't been needing to be on that limit all the time. And And like even with Max, like in Silverstone, for example, his car is not as good anymore, so he's pushing the limit. So you're going to see Max make a mistake or two, like because he's now pushing the car more than he was in 2023, where he didn't need to push near the limit. So obviously he was able to just calm it down and keep it under control the whole time, you know? So I think those things we don't take into account either. I do think with Norris, like Norris,
It's just hate.
Well,
Norris
there's-
just hate.
I will say one thing. I think Norris doesn't help himself either, right? Because Norris does make continuous small mistakes, but then people do pile on too much. Like for example, Singapore last year, I remember right after that race, I was like, fucking impressive race from Norris, like just dominated from start to finish. And everyone, especially Oscar fans, were like, what about those few mistakes he made? I'm like, look, really
he touched the wall.
Yeah, it was like,
what?
if you're going to say that was a bad race from Piastri, then or from Norris, then let's talk about Piastri, who was in fourth in the same car. Like, let's give credit where credit's due and not like pile on people. I do think Norris doesn't help himself because he does make too many mistakes, especially in a season where it's going to be close with his teammate and he needs to fix those mistakes. But I do think it's overblown. And to your point, like Piastri has made mistakes as well and people don't pile on. They're just like, yeah, it was only this and that. So I do think a lot of that is just down to bias. And you're right. Twitter is hilarious for it. I always find this as well, like we'll bring on like the hardcore, like, you know, yourself on Twitter, like, you know, hardcore Max fan, for example, or hardcore Lewis fan. And on these podcasts, I'm like expecting, we're going to have these big arguments. And we come on, it's like, these are really reasonable people every time.
Yeah.
I think Twitter just
Jason
brings
has
out this
had
thing.
Brad Philpott.
Yeah, I remember that.
That guy hates me.
The comments on that podcast that I did with him were like, wait, this guy's really reasonable. Like, what the fuck? Are you sure this is that guy from Twitter? It just always
That
happens.
guy hates me, blocked me like ages ago.
But I do think on Twitter, we just, like, I know myself, I will literally just see a thread, jump in and be like, what about this? And then leave. And I'll come back and there'll be like 100 likes or comments of people like, you're a fucking moron. And I literally just said this to wind people up and it worked. So let's just move on, you know. But I think Twitter brings out the worst in us sometimes.
I think another example too is like, was it the last race? It must have been Hungary, yeah. So Charles moved under braking like very erratically towards George.
Yeah.
And when we compare that to what Max did in Austria 24, it's like night and day difference. Like Max gradually moved over in the braking zone multiple times. Yeah. Lando also dive bombed and missed a few times. It was poor standards from both, but I mean, once Max loses his temper,
I loved the battle, by the way. Just
once Max loses his temper, he just does what he wants, right? And I love that about him, actually. You take the good with the bad. But the narrative post Austria was, we had like weeks of podcasts from Sky, and everyone was like, oh, Verstappen is the second coming of Gaddafi, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And Charles moves erratically in the braking zone. And because Russell is a better driver than Lando and avoids him, we don't have podcasts for the weeks, right? So again, the result dictates the reaction. And the offense is the same thing. Same type of mistake, same sort of tactic, but the response is completely different because of A, result, and B, driver. If Max did that to George, we would be having conversations about it to this day on Twitter right now.
Yep, 100%.
And it's just all rooted in who did it and if they get away with it or not.
It goes like, it's the same thing as like news and politics, right? It's like ratings driving news instead of news driving ratings. And it is just a case of like,
it's not even that, honestly. It's just, look, you bring
it's just fan bases is the point.
Like, look, Sky Sports is, if you think this is bad, you need to go back and watch the races in 2011. Lewis probably had the worst season of his career where I think he crashed every race.
Yeah.
Sky didn't blame him even once.
Mm-hmm.
He basically rammed
job,
into Kobayashi and they blamed Kobayashi for it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, look, and I think Tony Hinchcliffe kind of stated the exact fact why this happens. And it's just that the entire coverage of Sky their audience is British. It's specifically supposed to be, it's supposed to be for the United Kingdom. They pay the subscriptions. No one else does. Everything else, they've already signed the contracts, whatever doc shit they provide to the global broadcaster makes zero difference. And it used to make zero difference for decades. That's why actually the F1 TV was created specifically for this and why it is slowly going to overhaul. Now in United States already, F1 TV is available. Slowly it's going to reach more geographies because the whole thing about British bias, it came up in 2021 Why it came up in 2021 is because that was the first time you had a battle that went to the wire, but also because the social media was strong at that point, and the backlash that Sky Sports got, deservedly by the way, it was primarily because of that. Not just, sorry, just to jump on the point of rating the drivers, because I rate, I have my own driver
You
ratings that I
actually
do
do for a living, yeah.
yeah, not for a living. I mean, they don't pay that much. But look, I have my own criteria. My criteria is quite simple. What a car is capable of achieving and what it achieves, that's your baseline. Then you add the mistakes onto it, X, Y, Z, and then you add, maybe to a certain extent, the luck factor that tends to reduce whatever you're getting. So when you talk about the race in Hungary 2022, so I didn't give Max the perfect score that day because I think it was a mistake. And similarly for this particular race, I think it was Hungary. No, sorry, Spa. So why now? Personally, when it comes to Max, or if you're comparing Max to a Charles, the reason why I rated Charles higher, at least in my case, I rated Charles higher than Max is because Max's mistake was still consequential. That particular pole lap was not the pole lap, the qualifying lap was consequential in terms of where he ultimately finished. Essentially, Max had the second fastest car that race. I think we agree on that, and he finished fourth. Charles had the third fastest car and finished third. So these are the considerations that I personally take. I don't know how other. I look. I'll tell you right now, full disclosure. F1.com dog shit ratings. Uh, the race. I won't say anything about Ed Straw right now because I had a chat with him recently and he's a good guy. So nothing about him. But the thing is, everyone has a different criteria. I'll share mine. When it comes to the F1 discourse on Twitter, look, why Norris gets hate, there are two reasons. First is why the two biggest fan bases hate him. It's the Lewis Hamilton fan base and Max Verstappen fan base. The Lewis Hamilton fan base hate him because in 2021, he was the one who said that Max is the better driver. That's why they hate him. And then
Well, he was correct.
which is correct.
Yeah.
In 2024, the Verstappen fans turned on him because he was battling Max. It came down to just simply this. And once that thing happens, you have an army of people who just leave their brain to the wayside and just pretty much speak utter bullshit. And that's why, when it comes to F1 Twitter discourse, it's probably the not the smartest place to be. But
I don't know. F1 Twitter is the most fun though, because you get some crazy ideas on there. It is the most interesting.
I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah.
You need to check the threads Twitter discourse.
No, I don't want to go near threads. I'm not going there.
They're also there. You have a lot more of you can say Lando Norris fans, but maybe they'll probably graduate to X when they hit puberty. So
no, I just like X because it's just like it's so easily to get people annoyed on there. It's fun.
Okay,
but the reason
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Man.
I was gonna say the reason I don't hate Lando and I've never hated him, but the reason I don't rate him the same way I rate other drivers is because the things that happen with Norris, and again, I'll use Austria as an example. There was so much space on the left. Even if Max moved, you threw your own race away by not moving. All you had to do is go to the left. Max still gets the penalty for moving under braking. Even if he doesn't, you still finish right behind him rather than DNF.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the year prior to that, I think it was the year prior, maybe 2022, one of these races, but Sainz moves under braking in the exact corner that Max was moving in and moves more erratically, and Max avoids him and just passes later. And it's that kind of thing that Norris would do over and over again throughout the season. Now, in the second half of the season, Max stopped respecting Norris, like in Mexico, and just drove him off the road, and you can't blame Lando for that. But like in Texas, Lando attacked him for like 10 laps straight with a faster car, couldn't get by, goes off the track and passes, and then complains about the penalty. It's just like, you're supposed to be this top shelf talent, and you have the talent, but your brain is just mush and you can't get past that. So for me, I don't rate him the same way. It's just frustrating to watch him because I know if he could just turn his brain on in a positive way, he would be dominating right now.
Yeah. This is what we talked about when we were actually rating the drivers and teams the last time. It's like the problem for me is it's hard to put Norris up there because in terms of just pure raw pace, he's up there with Russell and Max and everyone else. Like, he is very, very quick. But it's all these little intangible things where he lets everything get under his skin and then he loses confidence. And, you know, like Miami this year was the perfect example of, like, I think it was almost like the same amount of laps that it took Norris and Piastri to get past Max. But it was the way Piastri did it was just so much more confident. He just, every lap was just like, no chance here. You know, I'll just push him a little bit. I'll wait for my mistake. And then breeze by him, didn't lose too much time. And Norris was just so aggressively trying to do it that he was just throwing time away everywhere.
The body language of the car, right?
Yeah. But it's just this, like, the raw talent is there. That's why I do think he's a top tier talent. And I what would be really interesting for me would be if Norris does win this championship, because that it could happen. He's staying close enough to Piastri.
Yeah.
Piastri could just as easily have a DNF. You know, things happen. If Norris wins this championship, it would be really interesting to see if he's a completely different driver next year, because basically all the pressure and stress would be gone. You know, it's like, okay, I have my championship now. But I wonder would he still be the same? Huh?
The first one's got to be the hardest to get.
Yeah. So I wonder it would be interesting just from a psychological standpoint to see, is he the same driver next year? Like, does he still falter to those pressures? Or is it just gone? Like, it would be interesting.
Exactly. But, I mean, that is one of the reasons why
I don't think he wins this year, by the way.
Because and that's why I tend to favor Oscar if I have to make a pick, because, and as I said far too many times, when it comes to the winning the mini battles, which is the fastest lap in qualifying or the first lap in the race, you will favor Oscar to nail those things. You won't favor Lando to do that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the high pressure points, you always, I mean, Canada, you could see the incident happening from few laps before that something was going to happen there, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the big moment when it comes to, right, this is something that Checo was brilliant at. When it came to the big clutch moments, he was always nailing these things, which was something which was brilliant about him. He won the race in 2020 just because of that. Everything was nailed when it needed to be. I don't think Lando has that yet. And again, you're right. If there's a DNF or something that happens and he ends up winning the championship, maybe things change in the future. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's where Norris falters behind the other guys, right? Because you just don't, like, when it talks to Leclerc, for example. I think you could. Again, I gave my reason for why I think there were so many mistakes. I think it's just car on the limit the whole time. But like, Leclerc no longer makes those mistakes now, bar in Spa. But it's not like an ongoing thing. Russell doesn't make ongoing mistakes. Every time someone talks about Russell in terms of his mistakes, it's like one of two races they bring up. I think it's like Australia and Singapore. Right? So like, he's not constantly making them. Piastri is very rare, and it's only his third season, so he's only going to get better. Max, it's basically non-existent. Like, it's really rare to a point where it's a big talking point. So I think that's where Norris falls below those guys in terms of,
the overall
and
package.
It's an unfortunate thing for him as well, because in terms of raw talent, raw pace, he's there. And it's unfortunate for him that he finally gets a dominant car and he has a fucking spectacular teammate. Like,
I keep saying this, right? Years. So unfortunate he got the dominant car.
Let's not give him too much fucking sympathy, but it is.
Okay, so just to wrap it up, we have a few questions. Let's just go through them quickly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Cool. So first is from Shayur Badal 572. Wow. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering whatever the username is. Okay. So it is, Damon, it's for you. George Russell has had a better season than Max this year.
I guess it's just, do you agree? Yeah.
I don't know. I think it just depends on how you rate them. I think if any other driver wins Japan and Imola like they did, they're getting best driver of the season this year. But because Max's standards are through the roof, sure, George has a better season.
I will say on that, I think Max has had higher peaks, but I think George has been more consistent, which is my argument for George. Yeah.
I'm going to piss off both of you, because in the
driver ratings that I've done,
I have Charles P1, Oscar P2, Max P3, George P4. So make of it what you want.
I think you just add a Ferrari tax on everything. So you're just like, well, he's driving a Ferrari, so he's the best. That's essentially,
Okay, next, Sri Lakshmi 5. So Max is a great driver, but can only drive as good as the car. And so Jason, is it your account or what is it?
But this is,
Yeah.
Is that the end of the question?
No. Max is a great driver, but can only drive as good as the car. And I'm tired of people saying that the present Red Bull car is a tractor, even when sometimes Max clearly makes a mistake.
Well, this is my quick rant on
4 likes, by the way.
Okay. Well, this is my quick rant on this. It's just like, obviously Max can only drive to the limit of the car, right? This is the argument I get in all the time with people where they're like, well, it was the 9th fastest car and he still won the race. It's like, look, it obviously wasn't the fucking 9th fastest, Maybe it wasn't the fastest, but other people underperformed. All he can do is extract the ultimate performance from the car. Yeah. My thing is, like, that's not supposed to be a dig at Max. What I say is, like, why he's the most impressive since Schumacher is because he extracts the ultimate performance from the car pretty much every lap, pretty much every fucking weekend. Yeah. And most of the time, the other drivers around him don't. And that's why sometimes he'll win a race in the second, maybe even third fastest car. It's not because, like, he's pulling the car up. It's because he's extracting the limit. But yeah, I keep saying this. I'm like, we need to just give some credit to Red Bull because they've still built a brilliant car, even if it's one that only Max can extract from. But it's just this thing all the time of like, Max is making the car faster. For me, it's like, well, technically, I mean, from a physics standpoint, that's not true. He just knows how to extract everything from it.
Pretty much got very angry at both of us when we didn't say that Red Bull was the 7th fastest car.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, that's my only argument on it. It's not supposed to be a dig at Max. It's just, look, obviously you can only extract the most from the car. It's just, clearly this is a very fucking hard car to extract that performance from. So like, I try to praise Max for like extracting the performance, and then I get dug at people. I'm like, oh no, it's obviously the 7th fastest car. It's like, no, like maybe in someone else's hands, I get why you could make that argument, but it's still like, this is the limit of what the car can do, and Max can extract that. I don't know.
Damien,
am I crazy?
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely not the fastest car, but on its weekend, it'll be competitive. Mm-hmm. I don't think Max outdrives the car in the physical sense that people will say. Like, he can't make it go any faster on the straight. It's just, he can't will it to be faster. But where Max makes the difference and the Max factor comes into play is both, yes, his consistency, but also the style he drives the car. He'll make a set of tires last twice as long as his teammate, or he'll make an overtake like turn 1 in Imola that other people just do not make. So that's where he brings the difference in, is that confidence, the ability to make that turn, because he was like 5 centimeters from being in the gravel, right?
Yep.
So that's where he can outperform that car in a sense, because anybody else sitting in that car, maybe the car is not the right word, but he can outperform the next driver, I guess, because the car itself is capable of making that turn, right? So it's because we focus too much on terminology, but the Red Bull is a tractor. I will never tell you that it's a good car this year.
I wouldn't say it's a tractor, but it's definitely not.
I won't use the word tractor. I won't use the word tractor unless we are talking about
the problem
who's the
is it's not
car. Alpine.
The problem is it's not like, it's in the top 4. It's just not consistently. It's not consistent enough to be a championship winning car. And to be honest, since McLaren and Ferrari brought upgrades as well, it's becoming more consistently the 3rd fastest car. So it's, maybe even 4th if Mercedes kind of get their shit together and are more consistent, because Mercedes have been up and down as well. But I
think you look at Hungary and you think to yourself, this is a championship contending car. And there are people on Twitter that would be like, yeah, Max is just underperforming. This could win the title. It's like, you guys are insane.
Yeah. No, it's, this is the big argument that I just like, I constantly have with people where I'm like, look, like, yes, we just need to make sure we give the car and the team some credit as well, because they've still 100%. Built a car, that, because if you put him in the Haas, like, he's not 2nd or 3rd in the championship, like, that's just not how Formula 1 works, No. And I think sometimes people like to think that Max can change physics. And I've had someone actually say to me, Max can change physics. So I do think some people are just delusional. But
I'll follow that guy. Let me know who it was.
You might be following him, by the way.
You probably are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesus. Trang and oh god.
What is with these names? Where did you find these people? Man.
I don't. Has Max genuinely matured since 2021? And how would Max, Charles, George, and Lewis perform in McLaren compared to Lando or Oscar? Okay, this is going to be spicy. First question: has Max genuinely matured since 2021?
Yes and no. I think his mentality is not so much, I absolutely must win at all costs. I think that was very desperate for him to sort of prove to himself he could be a world champion. And 2021 was the ultimate test. I mean, you're going against Hamilton in a Mercedes, right? So I think in a lot of ways he's matured because his approach to a weekend, while it may not have differed that much, but you see him come in very calm, relaxed almost all the time. You know, he's not in the media saying he's going to headbutt people. He's not He's not going through these motions anymore. He's grown up in a lot of ways. But then you can look at something like Spain where he gets completely, screwed by Red Bull, and then he just tries to drive Russell off the road. Has he matured? In some ways, absolutely. In other ways, you're never going to get that out of a person. This is the person they are. And that's why I always tell Max fans, sometimes you just put your hands up and say, yeah, I'm taking the good with the bad here, And that's fine. If it was me, I've done worse things in city traffic than what Max did to George Russell. Okay. So I'm not even that mad about it.
I would say definitely matured, and I even said back in 2022, I was like, this is a different Max in terms of how he's approaching the racing, in terms of just coming at it from a point of view.
The first race was the best example, right?
Yeah, I think he's just a different driver.
Charles through on the outside, he would never do that to Lewis.
But then the thing is, as Damien just said there, the other thing is, we're talking about a player sportsman as well, and Max is top of that at the moment, and those guys don't like losing, and sometimes you're going to get that red mist where they just don't like losing, and it's not just Max. I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier. When Max does it, it's more obvious, it's more interesting, but we see other drivers lose their shit all the time.
He does it in a very, very obvious way as well. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
That was also the case with Michael as well, right?
Yeah, Michael Schumacher. There's been plenty of times where he's done.
The car at La Rascas was a bit too much.
How the 1997 championship ended, for example.
Just an error, by the way.
Just an error.
Or walking over to Coulthard's garage to beat him up.
Yeah, I think this is what we want from our sports people. We want that bit of aggression.
Pretty much an entire lap on 3 wheels, fuming in a wet spa. So
he has matured, but I think the moment he loses that aggression, I don't think he's
he won't be the same, right?
World champion anymore.
I agree. Look, Lewis early in his career, he had that brashness about him as well. He mellowed down a lot during the Mercedes stint, where he became a bit more accommodating. Maybe age does it to people.
Vettel as well.
Earlier. He was a bit. A lot.
Yeah.
Again, it happens with age, but I think from 21 to 22, we saw Max mature a lot. I think there's also, at least for me, because look, as I said, I always, if I have to compare him, I compare him with Michael. For me, I just look at one.
I'm going to put a counter of you saying that on the top of that.
Yeah. So whenever I'm comparing him, I tend to look at one quality which I still think is missing. It is how to know how to win. He needs to know how to win, and I think that is one quality that I hope he ultimately gains, because once he does that, I think it's going to be a toss-up between him and Michael, because that's how good he is. The second question, by the way, just to how would Max, George, Lewis, and Charles perform in McLaren compared to Lando and Oscar? Let's start with Max. I think let's go through it quickly. Max, I think he dominates. He beats them, all of them.
Yeah, we see another 2023. Give Max that type of advantage that McLaren has now, and just being who he is, it's another 2023.
Yeah, I think the only difference there between Max, it's Max and Piastri we're talking about it together in the car, right?
Yeah.
If it's like 2023, I agree. However, I do think Piastri wins a few more than Checo.
100%. 100%.
But I agree otherwise. Yeah.
I think Max dominates.
And I'm a Checo fan before Mexicans come shouting in the comments.
Yeah. I think Max dominates in terms of he wins, as in it is certain that he'll win. But I think it's going to be competitive in a lot of races. It's not going to be a walk in the park in any which way. Oscar is a steely character.
He's not finishing 40 seconds up the road like he was from Checo.
Yeah,
or 200 points ahead, something like that.
No. But I just think over the course of the calendar, Max would have the measure to cleanly win that title.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Charles?
I'm going to say similar in a sense, but the caveat, because I think Charles is very talented, I think the caveat here is that it's going to be for his first title as well, and that pressure is going to creep up, and Oscar isn't a pushover. And I do think Charles is naturally quicker, and I think on Saturday, he's really going to put the difference in between him and Oscar. But the big thing that goes against Charles is, I don't know, maybe he was like cursed at birth, but he would have to get through he'd have to get through the races intact. So I'm going to say Charles would win the title, but it would not be clean.
I agree, but I do think, yes, it would be a lot closer, but mainly for one reason, which is I think that Max has a lot of confidence in Red Bull's strategy team, but when they fuck up, he lets them know, and then he calls them out again the next time and makes sure, he calls out on strategies and sometimes overrides when he needs to. Both Leclerc and Piastri don't call out their team on strategy. And, I know it's Piastri's newer, but Leclerc has never done it. He's always just had faith. And he's driving at
forced to, right?
He's driving at Ferrari. Well, Carlos Sainz overrode Ferrari quite a lot, so.
And won from it.
Yeah, exactly. And Leclerc doesn't do that. And I think that's where both of them would be closer, because I think there'd be a lot of cases where the strategy just wouldn't go in his favor and he wouldn't have the forthright to kind of override that. So, whereas I think Max would. So I think Leclerc would win, but I think it would be less dominant a win than say Max and Piastri.
Yeah, I think I think if I have to make a pick, I think one area where Oscar might have the edges in the wet weather. I'm still a bit doubtful when it comes to Charles' capabilities in the wet. But I think over a season, I expect Charles to win.
Would be a fucking
not as dominant
season,
as Max. Yeah. Would be a fun season. Yeah, would be more competitive compared to Max.
Yeah.
George.
I think George is a very underrated but also overrated driver. And I think he gets overrated because he went against Lewis, and Lewis's fans now put Russell in the Schumacher category because he beat Lewis.
Yeah.
They also put Kovalainen in that category, by the way.
Oh, I know. Kovalainen's better than Ricciardo and everybody Max has ever raced against. Believe me, I've heard it all. But I think George beats Oscar over the course of his season, because I think George has that sort of like that stoic mentality towards himself where he shows up every weekend and he does play the politics game really well, and he's consistent. He's consistently performing. Whether the car is there or not, George puts in pretty good weekends. I think the last bad weekend I can think of for George was Silverstone. But that's mostly because he took... Well, but prior to that, there wasn't any.
I agree.
I think he's good. I think he beats... I mean, I hate saying everybody beats Oscar because it's so disrespectful to Oscar. I just think Oscar's kind of new, and we're talking about guys that have... I don't know. I don't want to say
this is the problem.
Beats Oscar, but
it's his third season, and like he's only just made that step.
Beats Oscar, by the way.
Really?
I'm going to... Yeah, I don't think he does. Because, again, George has his... you can say skills or qualities, but Oscar is not that far behind. And again, there's this subtle narrative that Lando is the faster driver, but Oscar is the more reliable driver. I think the pace is all... They are neck and neck right now.
They're very close.
When Oscar
there's probably
nails...
a tenth at the ultimate peak between them.
Yeah.
Like it's not
But the thing is, when Oscar nails everything, this season, Oscar has beaten Lando on tracks where Lando has been unbeaten in qualifying and so. And again, he's in his third season and he's already at that particular level. So if you're comparing, and by the way, in terms of pure pace, I don't think there's much to choose between Lando and George. A lot of people might be an unpopular opinion here, but I don't think there's, in terms of pure performance, I don't think there's much to choose.
In terms of pure pace, I don't think there's much to choose between Lando and anyone. It's everything else. It's everything else Lando does.
And this is where George gets overrated because Lewis, in his worst form, George beats him, right? And now you've got Oscar against George, and I think you could probably flip a coin between them. I just lean George just based on his mentality, and I know Oscar has a good mentality too, but I think George is very cunning, and I think given the right car under him, I think he gets the job done.
I think if we were asking the real Oscar this time around in terms of the second half of the season, because it's going to be more ruthless.
I think if we were asking this same question and it was like Oscar's 6th or 7th season, we'd have a much clearer picture where we'd probably be putting Oscar above a couple of these guys.
Yeah.
But I think it's just Oscar is so early on that I think that experience would win them out over this championship season.
It's the Vettel effect, isn't it? In 2010, people weren't willing to give him the utmost credit, but Okay, Lewis.
Oh, this is
in current form, no. In current form, no. And that's not because I'm a Max fan, but in his current form, look at his last 2 race weekends. I don't think he's beating Oscar this year. And that's not to say career for career, Lewis wouldn't beat Oscar. Of course he would. But how he's raced from 24 and 25, I don't think he beats Oscar. And I don't think that's outrageous to say.
No, I think Lewis let's give him a bit more credit on this even. If it's in this generation of car, Oscar wins. And I think that's a simple way to put it for me, because I think he can't get a hold of this generation of car. He can't adapt. I don't know whether it's just this generation of car and he just, maybe it's not. Maybe it is something deeper. Like we saw Ricardo, for example, something just dropped off at that team and then he couldn't get his confidence back, couldn't adapt. Maybe it's just gone, But like if we were talking last generation of cars, Hamilton 2018, I think Hamilton wins in that situation.
100%.
But, this generation of car, whatever's gone on with Lewis over the last couple of years, I agree. If he can't beat George, I don't think he's beating Piastri. I know we just said George would beat Piastri, but what I mean is look at the difference in 2024. Oh, sorry. I said. But
the thing is,
the difference between them and the difference between him and Leclerc, I think Piastri would slot in there quite easily.
Yeah, and look at 2022. Lewis, a lot of his fans will tell you that 2022 is a really underrated season for him, and I'm sure it had its moments, but by Lewis's standards, 2022 is not a good season. And
Lewis
you look at what George did.
Lewis went on a 7-race losing streak to George. 7 consecutive races he lost to George, and they say that's an underrated. They're nuts.
Yeah. And in 2023, Lewis had a better season, but George also had god awful luck in 2023, and luck is part of the game, it is. But a lot of the points Lewis got as well, and I hate detracting so much from him, but a lot of the points he got were because the teams faster than him were having a bad weekend or DNF'd. He got a lot of points off other people's failures. Yeah. And then in 2024, it was probably his worst season in the sport, right up there with 2011. And I just don't think his current run of form from post 2021 till now is good enough to beat Oscar. And I mean, I'm not going to make this argument, but on a day where I've had it, I just don't want to talk to Hamilton fans anymore, I'd probably argue 2021 was poor form too. So
if you want to put it across those 4 drivers as well, real quick, there's another thing that we didn't touch on, which is imagine it was their first season in McLaren. Do they beat Piastri? And I think I would still hold up that the other 3 do because of their adaptability. And that's one where Lewis clearly can't adapt very quickly. Whereas I think George, he's adapted. Look how good he was in a Williams, for example, and then jumping over, easily done.
He beat Lewis in the first season at Mercedes, right?
And Max, we know how good he is at driving a difficult car, so I wouldn't see him having any issues with a balanced car and adapting to that. And Leclerc has driven Ferrari, so I'm sure he can adapt to anything. So
I think next season there's one thing that we are all going to realize: the whole thing about ground effect cars being the reason why Lewis is struggling. The whole theory is going to fall flat on its ass.
Or it won't, but my bet would be on it will.
It would. Yeah.
No, my bet would be along with you, but yeah.
The only caveat I'll say for Charles, because I do rate him very high, is when the car was more neutral or maybe a little less neutral, but in Sainz's ballpark, the gap was only a tenth and a bit.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about going from Ferrari to McLaren and the car suits Oscar, I don't think he'll beat him. And that's not to say that Charles isn't a better driver. I would say Charles is the second best driver on the grid right now, and I don't think there's
needs that time to get on top of things as well.
And that's just it. He's going to get there, and he's going to have to sit in that car and give his feedback, and it doesn't happen like that. It takes time. So,
plus ground effect has shown that the adaptability curve is a bit slow. With almost everyone we've seen that. Yeah,
but very sensitive, right?
I think Max and George would be the 2. If it was adapting, I think those would be the 2.
George doesn't beat Oscar.
I don't know. I just because I've seen George go from shit car to shit car and adapt.
I want to say full disclaimer that all 5 of these drivers we're talking about are world class, and Oscar does not get enough credit. There's a lot of people that detract from him.
100%. Yeah.
So even though I've said several of these drivers would beat Oscar, and I've given some context, I do want to say for the record that Oscar deserves all the flowers. He should get them.
For me, it's only because it's his 3rd season. If we were talking about this in 2 or 3 seasons more, I think I'd be like, no, I think Oscar.
The problem is we tend to rate Lando too low, and then once Oscar beats him, it's a bit he just beat Oscar. Oh, he just beat Lando. What's the big deal? But next one, Dane Lua.
There's more?
Oh God, this is Dane. The man has put in a lot of effort. Vettel 2012 season was much more impressive. Oh God. Okay, Damien.
Here we go.
Vettel 2012 season was much more impressive than Max Verstappen 2024 because in 2024 Verstappen had the best car by a mile in the first 6 races, and the reason he still won the championship was because both McLaren as a team and Norris made silly mistakes which allowed Max to run away with ease. Vettel, on the other hand, was on the grid at the time with the toughest opponents like Alonso. Okay, wow. Alonso, Lewis, Kimi, Rosberg, Button, and he again put Rosberg. So Rosberg twice, apparently. So Rosberg and Michael Schumacher, and despite we have 7 different winners at the start of the season. Vettel being 44 points behind Alonso, Vettel still managed to claw back those points and win the championship. If you put Max in the grid against Alonso, Lewis, Kimi, etc., he would crack under pressure and lose the championship. Jason, okay, this is the best line. Jason would agree with me on this. So, another hot take. Vettel 2011 season is better than Max 2022. Oh,
Vettel
okay.
2011 or 2012?
2011. Because Vettel was more consistent in that season. I mean, Vettel was on podium in every race beside Nürburgring, where he was 4th, and the DNF at Abu Dhabi. That's actually true. Verstappen's worst result, if we don't include 7th in Silverstone and Singapore and 6th in Brazil, which would have been 7th had he not disobeyed. Okay, so there's actually an argument, by the way. I didn't think about it.
Look, there is an argument.
Let the Verstappen fan answer first.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we'll start with the 2024 and 2012 comparison.
2011,
Those
isn't it?
seasons.
No,
It was
there's
2012
and 24, 2011 and
So-
22.
Oh, okay, right. That's what I was getting confused.
2012 was one of the best seasons, ever, really, right? It's a great season. 24 was rated a lot higher in recent years simply because we had a lot of race winners and we had just gotten out of the Lewis and Max dominating era. So the desire to see winners came to life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Max crumbles under the pressure. I think that's a really weird narrative spread by a lot of Hamilton fans, and they just reference Jeddah
Dane
21.
Lua is not a Hamilton fan. I can attest to that.
No, that's fine though. But that's where the narrative starts. It starts from there. A lot of people say Max cracks under the pressure because sometimes he'll get mad and make a mistake. But there's too many examples of him proving that narrative completely wrong. A most recent example of that would be Brazil 2024. All the pressure in the world. You got a 44-point lead with 5 races to go, including Brazil. And you're starting 17th in torrential rain while Norris is in 1st.
Yeah.
To pull off the race he did, there was all the pressure in the world. If Norris wins that race like he should have, and Max gets unlucky and a midfielder car taps him and he's out of the race, the gap's 18 points with 4 races to go. All the pressure in the world. So I don't think that narrative Max cracks under pressure is anywhere close to true. Will I say the 2012 season's better for Vettel than the 24 season for Max? Maybe. But I think his reasoning is very off. When he says the only reason Max won the title is because he had the fastest car the first 6 races, for fun, like I said before, delete those races. Start the season in Miami. Max is in P2 to start the season. He still wins the title with 1 race to go if you get rid of the first 6 races.
He also said that I'm playing the Dane Lua advocate right now. He also said that McLaren and Norris made a lot of silly mistakes, which they did as well.
Yeah.
They did, but that's not something you can take or fault Max for. He can only race the opponents that are there.
Yep.
So, at the end of the day, whether people make mistakes or not, we can't simulate it 1,000 times over and find the most optimal results. You have to race what you're given. So
exactly.
I don't think his reasoning is sound, but I think the seasons are comparable. And I think if you like Vettel more than Max, you'll agree with him. And if you like Max more than Vettel, you'll disagree.
Damien just literally with the last sentence there answered for me. Because while I think Max is a better driver, and
Dane
I have him
said
3rd
Jason
on my
would
list.
agree with me on this. You cannot disagree now. You can't break the man's heart.
But the problem is like
the woman's.
Basically just summed it up there. Where I think the only reason I think either is more impressive is because I'm a huge Vettel fan. So I kind of part of me is like, yeah, I think they were.
I mean, there are a few things,
speaking,
right? He's actually went into a lot of detail. On one side, you had Max having a dominant car in the first 6 races, and then having Norris and McLaren as a rival. On the other side, you have Vettel, who had on and off competitiveness in terms of Red Bull, at least until you can say Japan, when the car finally came alive. And in terms of competition, he had Alonso and Kimi.
But can I just say, I think 2012 is more impressive, but that's purely because 1, I'm a huge Vettel fan, and 2, because 2012 I think was a more entertaining season. So in my head, it was more impressive.
Yeah,
but like
I'll give. I'll give you a point for Max though. In 2012, you had a lot of drivers taking points off the other. In 2024, more points were available to Lando in theory. Oscar was
Yep.
essentially underperforming. The
Yep.
only reason, and you know what, I said this a long time ago, but Max should have wrote a really nice letter to Maranello thanking them, because the second half of the season when Ferrari took points off McLaren was very helpful for Max.
Yep.
But Max in the first half of the season had to fight McLaren by himself. And in the second half of the season, where he only got 2 wins, which was Brazil and Qatar, he had to maximize as many races as he could. And we were cheering for P4. That's not something that we were used to doing. So I think Max, even though he was against Norris in his first title bid, the gap that existed due to performance window was very narrow, and he had nobody to bail him out. There was nobody like that. Whereas in 2012, you had points spread across everybody.
Yeah.
Can we just say that using logic and context, 2024 was more impressive, but I'm just not going to admit that because I'm a Vettel fan and I love 2012. Can we just leave it at that?
Plus Jason would agree on this.
I love it. Just Jason would agree on this. Yeah. I think a lot of people think I hate Max for some reason though, and I don't.
What
and
was
they
the
think I hate
2011 comment?
Lewis and Max. Yeah, it was 2011 compared to 22.
Yeah, 2011 compared to 2022. There's an interesting argument to be made here, by the way. I hadn't thought of it. I think
the podium thing is a really good angle.
Yeah,
it's
plus
good.
the pole
I like
positions.
And the pole, but you know what?
That's still
I'll
the
give
all-time
Max
record, right? I think Vettel still has the all-time record.
13 in a season?
15.
I think it is.
15,
yeah, I know.
In 19 races.
It is. And I think with 22, and just Max as a driver, his qualifying is both underrated and overrated, depending on who you talk to. But he's never been a Saturday driver. That said, he still does very well on Saturdays.
He's one of the best qualifiers on the grid.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
he is one of the best qualifiers.
100% he is. And he's consistent, which brings him to that level. But I think Max shines on the Sunday. And Sebastian was maybe a little more Saturday. That said, though, 2022, I mean, we had Singapore, which I'm going to blame Red Bull for. He was 9/10ths up before they ran out of fuel. I mean, he was going to take pole position in Singapore. There's no way he doesn't win that race, bar DNF. So we lose out on Singapore, and we may never even win there because of that mistake.
Yeah.
And Silverstone, he gets the debris, which is super unlucky. There's a crash 10 cars behind him, and he drives around and picks up debris in the floor and essentially loses like 40 points of downforce, whatever it was. So there's two things that happen out of his control. And then he has the 2 mechanical DNFs to start the season. And his worst result in Brazil was because he was like, "Oh, Lewis, I'm going to drive right into you." So, as far as
that one,
as far as the season goes, Vettel's season was probably a little more impressive when you look at the raw numbers. But when you think about what Max did in 22, he overturned a huge deficit. Now, it was only a few races in, but he still overturned a huge deficit against a competitive Ferrari. Ferrari didn't fall off until Spa.
You're being too generous to Ferrari here. They had 3D. We had, I think, 3 or 4 consecutive DNFs or something for Ferrari. What was it? First, the engine blew up, then something else happened, again engine blew up, then they fucked up the strategy.
It was like Max DNF in Bahrain, and then Charles loses in Jeddah to Max on the last lap. And then it was Australia, Max DNFs again. And then after that, Charles had Spain DNF from the lead, which was tough because that was probably his best weekend of the year up until that point. And then he had, I think it was Miami was his other DNF.
No, there was in Monaco the race win was gone again. Thanks Ferrari.
No, but I meant to engine DNFs only.
Yeah,
was it Miami?
Baku,
that's right. Okay, so and of course Charles gets screwed in Monaco, which obviously sucks for him.
Screwed in Silverstone.
Well, Max gets screwed in Silverstone more than Charles. Max wins that race from first without any... Right? So without the debris, Max wins the race. There's no one to... But at the end of the day, he does get screwed in Silverstone. And then Max's only bad weekend in 22, his only really bad weekend at all would have been Brazil. Every other weekend was class. I mean, Singapore,
he would have gone on to at least
but
be on
it's
the
not
podium,
like
if not win.
But it's not
if not for the mistake when he was trying to overtake
with
Lando.
the fuel. Oh,
sure.
And the safety
but
restart.
That race, the race win was essentially lost when they underfueled his car. That was an easy win
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah.
So you got Max trying to cut through a very difficult track. He makes one lockup and it costs him down to P7. I don't think that's a bad weekend on him. I think it's a less than good weekend. But like a bad weekend is like where you're in Brazil, the car has no pace, and then you, at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah,
But
that was going to happen. Yeah.
with Vettel in 2011, I don't know. I think the thing that gives him somewhat of an edge here is the seasons were more competitive at that point, whereas the second half of 22, Max kind of just drove on autopilot. I mean, some of his best drives come from that time, though, right? Like Japan 22 was really good. I wish it was a full race
Zandvoort.
distance. Zandvoort was amazing, and then of course, like Spa was one of his best drives, 14 to first, and won by 20 seconds. So I don't know if 2011 is better than that, but at the same time, it's completely different season.
Yeah.
Casual, I have to leave in exactly 5 minutes. So if there's another essay,
There are a lot of unpopular opinions by Dane Lua. I will answer them later, specifically to you, man. William,
is there one more really interesting one?
No, I can't go through it. They're too long.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just. There's one which is trolling, which is just saying the way he's driving, he will end someone. There's it from Coffee, and he's just kidding. He's trolling.
Yeah.
Okay. William VRFT. Does Max risk never winning another title simply because of poor career decisions? It seems so obvious that he will, but things move so fast in F1 and he carries a lot of baggage with him. It's actually a good question.
Very possible. I think unlikely, but it's possible. The baggage he carries with him would be his management team for sure. But at some point, Max is in control of that. So I think he wins another title in his career. I think he wins more than one from here on out. But there is definitely a scenario where he doesn't win again.
Yeah, I think this is just such a hard question to answer because it's like one of those ones where it is just maybe not, because how many I've been watching since
you asked for Vettel in 2013 or Alonso in 2006.
Like this is like I've been watching since 2004, and for me it's like, in 2004 when I started watching, if you told me like this was started watching properly, before that family were watching it, I had seen it and so on, but like if you had told me in 2004 this was going to be Schumacher's last championship, I think you were insane. But it was. Yeah. Same after 2006 with Alonso, same after 2013 with Vettel, as we just said. Yeah. Like, we probably at the end of 2023 would have said Verstappen is winning every title till the regulations end. Like, it pretty much was a done deal until it's not. So
I have a post regarding the same, that by the end of this regulation, Vettel would be a 5-time world champion with close to 80-85 wins.
Verstappen, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, Verstappen.
Yeah. I wish.
Yeah. So it's just hard to say, because he could make what's objectively a good career decision that just doesn't pan out. Like these things happen all the time. Like if think about this, if Hamilton hadn't have gone to Mercedes and stayed with McLaren, Hamilton would be a one-time world champion.
Pretty much.
Like, objectively speaking.
And not just that, if COVID didn't happen, Hamilton never wins 7 titles. We would have moved on from the regulations in advance, and Max would be sitting on 4 or 5 right now.
Yep, easily on. Easily on 5, right? Like
100%.
I mean, like there's luck goes both ways.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, right.
Yeah. Anyways, I guess
sorry that I had to call it early. I've got a throat infection.
That's all right.
I'm surprised my actual voice worked the entire way through this, but yeah,
there are a few questions that are left unanswered. We'll answer all of them in the next pod. Just so you guys know. Thanks. We have to cut it short because it's actually a long time now. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. Follow Damien at Clapped, and also any of Damien's followers, subscribe to us. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
Damien, thanks so much for joining us, man. It's been a real pleasure. And I'm flabbergasted by, we always bring on a quote unquote like super fan of someone, and they turn out to be really reasonable. It's just always.
We might have to bring the quick stop. What's the quick pit stop? Whatever those guys are.
No, I think we bring
Lewis
on
Hamilton.
I think we bring on FIA girly next for a Lewis Hamilton chat. I'm sure that will be completely reasonable.
Bring me on with her.
Will do.
No, don't. I got nothing.
And on that bombshell, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching.
Cheers. Bye-bye.